Okay, yes, I'm late. Someone, I haven't looked to see, but it wouldn't surprise me if someone had dropped a comment to let me know that I was late on my previous post on my personal page or the podcast page. But as I said yesterday, if you're not used to me being late by now, I'm sorry, but you should be. So, this is a very, hey Ashley, thanks for hopping on. Again, you were here with us last night. This is a very exciting episode for me. I've had Josh, my dear friend Josh Owens, on once before. In fact, let me text him, because we were texting a moment ago, and I was telling him I was sorry for being late. Let me make sure he knows that we are live. Here we go. Okay, and Josh, okay, cool. I didn't even have to text you. There. So, me and Josh are going to cover a lot of ground today. I'm certain of that. We're going to try to, what did you say in your post, Josh? I can't remember exactly, but probably not too long, I think you said. But one thing that I don't think me and Josh have talked about before here on Not Your Mother's podcast is his research that he's done on the Bible. And we'll get into that here once I have him join. Eventually, we'll get into it. But that's something that can be kind of triggering for a lot of us, to use that word, or can be kind of annoying, or like, I don't want to hear about the Bible or study the Bible or even think about the Bible. Like, we all have 10 copies, but just thinking about it or thinking that we have to do some research on it is kind of like, no, I don't want anything to do with it. But Josh was brave enough to dive in and do some research and just kind of figure out how he feels about the Bible, and not just how he feels, but conclusions that others have arrived at from studying it, and not making it this, he'll put it more eloquently than I will, but not making it this end-all, be-all beacon of truth. I'm not saying that there's not truth in it. I would never say that. Doreen, thanks for joining. This is going to be a great episode. Excuse me. I know it's kind of late for you guys, the Midwest, and the East Coast, but I'm glad you've joined us. So, I'm going to bring Josh on here in just a moment. First. No, not first. I'm going to bring it on right now. So, give me a second here. I will add you, Josh. It is not letting me add you. I don't know why. Here we go again. It's saying that I can't add you, Josh. So let me do this. Let me try something else. Josh, you now have the option to request to come on, but it shows me, it'll show me if I'm able to add someone or not. So for whatever reason, Josh, we're still having that issue. It's not letting me add you. I'm sorry. I don't know why it's doing that. Sports Center, thank you. But we should be live here shortly with Josh, but I'm still going to talk. We still got stuff to talk about. So I do want to apologize because I have not, I know yesterday we had, what do we have, two live episodes, and I have not put out a produced episode in a while. I know you guys had voted that a lot of you liked those produced episodes as opposed to the live, so I'm sorry that we haven't put one of those out. I have a couple. I think we have, let's see here, Good Humans. I wonder if it won't let me add Good Humans. Josh, it's still not letting me add you. I don't know why. Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyways, I'm sorry that I haven't put out produced episodes for you guys, but part of the reason that I haven't, just to be brutally honest, is that I'm recording. This is on an older phone, an older device, and what I'm recording most of these on is my newer phone, and I didn't realize when I first got it, but what I'm recording, and I may have mentioned this on here before on a different podcast. I know I talked to someone about it, maybe not you guys, but when I record, it doesn't. The format it records in is a higher format than this computer that I bought, that you guys donated for to help us buy here at Not Your Mother's Podcast. It's a higher quality or setting than I can work on here. So I apologize. That is part of the reason for the delay. But I am working on. I have them recorded. I have them recorded, but they. What's what I'm looking for? I have them recorded, but I haven't been able to produce them yet because my laptop here is not able to do that. Give me 1 second. We are still working out some kinks here. Bear with me, you guys. I appreciate your patience. Ah, here we go. Extra feedback from me. I know that's annoying. Josh, how are you? Can you hear me? I can hear
Okay,
you, I think.
now we're good.
Yeah, dude, I'm sorry. This has been challenging. Not on your end. It's something to do with Facebook. It's not Josh's fault at all that this is this way. Can anyone that's watching that's not me or Josh, let us know if you're hearing any feedback, not just my squeaky chair, any kind of feedback from me. You're hearing anything? Josh, does it sound okay on your end, or are you getting feedback from me? I can switch to headphones. I think I can if I need to.
I'm hearing you, but I'm hearing your like old audio now too.
Oh, like it's catching up.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, let me try with
Um,
my headphones. Let me see if that works. Hang on, guys. Right back. What?
I was gonna say I may have to like cut out and then relocate because I'm
Yeah.
downstairs and the Wi-Fi is not great. So let me kill the app, go
That
upstairs,
could
and
be
try
it
again.
too. Okay, we'll try that. Sorry. Thank you, Josh. So now we definitely look like a couple of, excuse me, whatever year olds trying to make this work. So I apologize once again. I'm really good at apologies. I'm going to grab my headphones, guys, since Josh isn't here. Give me 1 second. We will use those if need be. Thank you guys for sticking with us. I know this is a little challenging here to start, but we'll get going here shortly and have a great conversation. I'm really excited about it. So give us a couple of minutes. And we will get rolling. Who all is in here right now? Ashley's in here. Doreen's in here. I think Josh is in here. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Gavin, Michael, John, Michael, Michael, John, Corwin is here. My older, younger brother. Not really, but really. Thank you for joining us, Gavin. I don't know how long you have. I don't know how busy you are at the moment with all your children's, but thank you for taking a minute to check out this live episode. I'm going to have Josh Owens on here with us momentarily. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but that's how the internet works, and especially Facebook. Once I have Mark Zuckerberg's cell phone number, this won't be happening as often, but still waiting on him to accept my friend request on Facebook. So once he does, then we should be good. Looks like Josh Owens is back. Josh, hey Ruthie, thanks for hopping on. Um, Josh, it's still, if you don't mind sending me a request again, it's still not letting me. Oh, Josh is gone. It's still not letting me add you, Josh. So if you could send another request, that would be helpful. Thank you for that. And once again, guys, I am live and Josh will be live. Josh Owens, our dear friend of the podcast, friend of mine, will be live with us here shortly. We are trying to work through some connectivity and audio issues to get started. Once we get that dialed in, we are gonna fuck shit up. So there he is. How are you, sir?
Okay, good.
Is there still a delay? Is there still an echo? How are we doing on all that?
I don't hear an echo,
Okay.
but
Ooh, you're cutting out a little bit. We lost you. There you are. A little
mother
bit of a delay,
shit.
but we can
Let me
work through
try my
that.
phone. Maybe it's my iPad that's fucking this up.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
I'm sorry, dude. Swear to God, guys, we're not 50-year-olds. I know it seems like it, but we're not. And nothing against my dear 50-year-old, 50 plus listeners out there. But we may look like we don't know what we're doing, but we know what we're doing. Damn it, we've got this figured out. But thank you everyone that's joined. We are oh, perfect timing. Hello, mother. Thank you everyone that's joined. Super grateful you guys are taking the time out of your evening. I promise this is not going to be the entire podcast. I know I promised you a guest, and here it is. Stuart's just sitting here shooting the shit, but our guest will be on with us momentarily. We are, as I said already, working through those technical difficulties. In the meantime, allow me to introduce to you a new pop vinyl given to the podcast by the lovely Kiana Robinson, who I've mentioned on here before for her pop vinyl gifts. And this is Michael Jordan. I didn't know there was a Michael Jordan pop vinyl. That's pretty dope. Even the shoes. I like it. If you know me well, you know I'm a fan of basketball, and of course, growing up on Michael Jordan was a big deal. If they had an Allen Iverson pop vinyl, I would have that too. But they don't have one. I've looked. All they have is a bobblehead. They have two bobbleheads. I have like a really crappy one and a really good one, and the really good one's like $30 for a bobblehead though. Like if it was autographed, which it would be more than 30, I'd go for it. But it is not autographed, and it's, well, maybe not 30, but whatever it was more than I wanted to pay. So we're adding Josh right now. Bear with us as we work through these technical difficulties and get to the meat of the podcast, which is coming up soon. Here comes Josh in just a moment. I'm excited for him to hop on with us. That looks better, Josh. Can you hear me okay?
Okay, how are we doing?
I can hear you great. I don't know if there's a delay or an echo, but how
I
is it
think
over
we're
there on
good.
your end? Do you hear much of it? Okay.
I
I
think
think
we're
there's a
good.
little. This is yeah. Oh, you stopped. You were being still for a moment, and I thought I lost you, but no, you're there. Cool, perfect.
Okay.
Um, great. And
Dude,
I
I'm
don't really
sorry.
see much. Don't be, dude. Don't.
We have terrible Wi-Fi and I'm like in the
Oh,
basement, so it just
hmm,
that's why I was
even
hoping to do it
better.
on my computer because I can hardwire, but it's all good.
Ah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, this seems really good
Not your
actually.
fault.
We did 3 lives yesterday, and this is just as good as the best of those was. So I don't really
Cool.
see much of a delay, which is we are both familiar with working through that, but it's a lot easier when you don't. Is that a United State of Indiana or a?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Yep. Hawkins PD.
Cool, very cool. I didn't
Yeah.
know if it was them or at least Stranger Things, which I no spoilers, please. Which I have every right to have it spoiled because I haven't even started the second season.
Wait,
So
you haven't even started?
the second season, first
How?
season I finished, terrific.
But there's three.
Yes, I know.
So how dare you?
I
Is
know,
my
Josh.
point.
I fucking know, man. I know.
Did you see my
I'm
shock?
terrible.
That's how
Yeah,
embedded in
no.
the culture it is. I was like,
Yeah. But there's three.
but there's three. Anyway,
Oh, Larissa, thanks for joining, and hello again. And I will, hey, Kathy, thanks for joining. I will definitely, a couple things at the beginning. One, I don't want to limit this podcast in any way. So, me and Josh, I don't know if we've told the story here before, and I won't bore you guys with it if we have, but we have a history with the fuck word. So, curse words will probably be said on here aplenty, and we don't mean that to
okay, I was
upset
gonna
anyone.
ask.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd rather we not, we can pass. But I already said a bunch
I
of them.
I really
So
don't mind either way. They come out of me
okay,
naturally, so if it happens, I apologize. But I know you have listeners that would prefer not, so I'll try my
right.
best not, but they may come out.
Yeah, well, I already said them. That's the thing. Once I say them, like those listeners, and I love my listeners, all of them,
You
each
open
and
up the
every one.
floodgates.
But yeah, once you do that, it's and I understand the concept. Like, well, he said fuck. Like, I'm out. Like, I'm not gonna keep listening to see if he stops. So we might mitigate it somewhat, but I didn't want to put that label on it. But I get what you're saying, especially the content we're going to talk about today with the Bible. We might have more people listen to it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I'll do what I can.
All right, I'll try as well. We'll see. I did so many, not so many, but we did. I had 3 different guests yesterday and 2 different, and you had joined. I appreciate you hopping on those, Josh. But I just kind of like towards the end, not towards the end, probably the second episode we did. I was like, fuck, I need to be able to let loose with these bad words. So it is what it is. Let me.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So Josh, let's go back. Sorry, I know I've had you on before, and we kind of have banter back and forth on Facebook. And a lot of the people, not everyone, but a lot of people that are here commenting or watching are Facebook friends of mine. So grateful for them being here. So they may already know you, but let's give you a proper introduction now that I said a bunch of bad words and I did a bunch of other stuff and we had our technical difficulties. Let's go back and
Okay.
tell me. Let's see. Tell me where we know each other from, and tell me about the work you're doing with Good. How about that?
Okay, so we met in prison, and
Sunnyvale, yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. No, I think. See, you're better at remembering this stuff than I am. I
Oh,
think we met before college. Is this correct? But I don't remember meeting you until college.
Right. I vaguely remember it. There are weird things from my childhood where I remember just little bits and pieces. I think
Yeah.
everyone's that way, but that's something that stuck out to me. Yeah, we met not like we were homies, but we definitely met before college. But getting to know
Got it.
each other, that happened at Hyles Anderson College.
Yeah, I'm terrible at remembering that stuff, but we definitely met in college, and I think like right off the bat, because like we were all in the guys' freshman orientation for
Yes.
like that first like week or two. Was it 2
Mhm.
weeks? And
Yeah. If it was up to Cassida, it would have been a month, but yeah, at least two
oh yeah.
weeks.
So
Air Force, man.
there was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 of us that like just sort of like naturally all became buddies. You,
Yeah.
me, well, you already knew Wardy, I think.
Yeah, I knew
But
Warden.
you, me, Wardy, Gavin, like I think we both already knew Gavin as well.
Yes.
Joe Gotti, Cisco, well, not Cisco because he wasn't in our grade, but like there was a few of us.
Right.
So we just became fast friends, I guess.
Yeah.
And then stayed buddies all through college. And yeah, and what was the other question?
Well, let me expound on that a little bit more. Josh, this is my intro for Josh. Josh has been instrumental in me even starting the podcast. He was motivational because he has his own podcast. But on top of that,
Oh,
and
well,
I'm just
thank
going
you.
to say, Josh, you're not going to probably love it, but it's whatever. He's helped me financially. He's helped me emotionally. Like I've been through some real rough patches, and Josh has been there for me during them. And so it is safe to say, very safe to say, that Not Your Mother's podcast, this audience, this thing that we're building, it wouldn't be here without Josh in many ways. So thank you, Josh, for that. It's the truth. I
Well,
know you
you're
wouldn't like
welcome.
it, but
I don't think that's true, but
I know it is. So,
that's what friends are for,
but
man.
yeah, I agree. But tell me more about how long has your podcast? I don't know. I know it's been going longer than it's been called Good Humans, but maybe
Yeah.
how long has it been Good Humans, and what's going on over there? Because I want people to be familiar with it.
So it's been Good Humans just over 2 years now.
Oh wow.
And almost 2 years worth of episodes. I took a short break between season 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But dude, it's a completely different thing than what it started out as.
Oh yeah.
In a good way.
That's a beautiful thing.
But I can't picture my life without podcasting in some form.
Yeah.
And this has been the most cathartic thing I think I've ever done.
Yeah.
It's like we've talked about this a lot. It's been a lot of like self therapy.
Oh yeah.
Just
Big
like
time.
selfishly, it's been self therapy, and like I just get to talk things out,
that.
and it's crazy that other people listen and they're like,
listen?
what is this guy talking about this week? Especially
Yes.
like the ones that blow my mind are especially the solo episodes. People listen to those for
Yeah.
some reason, but then like I've gotten to meet and talk to so many awesome people.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of them that haven't even come out yet. I talked to a guy that started a business that helps other businesses build a charity portfolio, is what he calls it. And it's like an
Oh
investment
wow.
portfolio, but like you
Yeah.
get to like piece together a portfolio of charities to donate to, and then they
Huh.
do the work on the back end to report back and tell you exactly where your money's going, what it's being used for. His name is Joel. I got to talk to him. I just got to talk to a guy that goes around and talks about mental health, and everything that surrounds that with school students, like middle school students.
Oh wow.
And he's amazing. And then like some of my heroes, like Pete Holmes,
Yeah.
was a
Let's say.
huge one. I like, it might sound weird, but I listen back to that episode probably once a month just because
That's
I still have
good.
a hard time believing that it happened.
It happened. Yes.
But the episode that I just released, Mike Falzone, is one of my favorite comedians, has been for a long time. I got to talk to him. Matt Heyer is one of my favorite musicians. Christopher Swan, who I think is watching, I saw him join.
Nice.
He owns the podcast network that I joined, Accidental Information.
Right. Yeah.
And I got to meet him through the podcast. He was a guest originally.
Yes.
So it's been awesome to meet people that I never would have met if I didn't have this podcast.
Right.
These are people like all over the country. But the other thing I love about it is I've gotten to sit down and have like really deep, meaningful conversations with friends, people I already know, that
Yep.
like there's something about it. I was just talking to a buddy of mine that stopped in town a couple weeks ago. There's something about a podcast having that excuse to like sit down and talk
Yeah.
that really opens things up. It's almost like
Yeah.
gamifying the conversation. Like there's a goal
Yeah.
to it. So like
Yeah.
there's like that excuse. But so it's been really cool to like sit down with you and like Evan Jones, Evan Small, two Evans,
Yeah. All the
Joel
Evans.
Gratic, Kevin Rosati, which I think he joined too. I haven't released that one yet.
Yeah.
Like some people that I already knew that are just great, great, great people. And I
That's
found
awesome.
out so much about them and how they think about things. And so it's, if nobody listened, I would still be doing it because
Yeah.
I'm getting so much out of it, but it's just so cool. So
I
I
love it.
love it.
And I couldn't agree more that podcasting is therapeutic. And I think something that, and again, so much of my, it's funny because we go through everyone goes through stages of what they look to for motivation or whatnot. For me, it was Gary Vaynerchuk for the longest time, who I still follow and
Same.
what has been a driving force. But Joe Rogan is someone I follow more closely now. And the thing that I learned from him just watching his podcast, and then I actually got to meet a guy by the name of Jocko Willink who has his own podcast.
I forgot you met
And
Jocko.
yeah, it was just a meet and greet. To be fair,
Yeah.
all my social media made it look like we were hanging out in his place, but it wasn't. It was just a meet and greet. But Jocko said, and I gleaned from Joe, like whoever your guest is or whatever you're going to talk about, make sure that, and it sounds silly almost, but make sure you're interested in it or make sure you're passionate about it. And the one side of that is, well, yeah, duh, because it's going to be a boring conversation. But the other side is it's very, very fulfilling if you're talking about something that you and or your guest is very interested in. It becomes more than a conversation. Like you said, there's a goal and there's more to it than just a conversation. Let me do this. I need to, hey, Josh Cox, thanks for joining. Kathy, we got a little conversation here. Ruthie's ears are bleeding because we're cursing. Please pray for us. Yeah. She's joking.
Sorry,
the name
Ruthie.
of this podcast is Good Humans, and I will drop that in a comment here shortly and put a link to his website. We'll pin that comment so it'll sit at the top. And you guys can, as you're watching now on Facebook, or if you watch it later, you'll be able to just click and go right to his podcast. And very, very interesting, very, very helpful information. And a big thing that what I love about Josh's podcast is that it is like my podcast is random. Like obviously we talk about IFB and religion and the escape from such things, but that's the theme. But like if you heard Not Your Mother's Podcast, if you hadn't heard the podcast itself before, you wouldn't know what it's talking about. Good Humans is exactly that. Josh is interviewing people that he believes are good humans. He's talking to them about better ways to be a good human. And correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, but I think that's kind of, it's not just the name of the podcast. It's exactly what he's doing. He's cultivating good humanity. And so I love that. And so, yeah, please check out his podcast, Good Humans. Okay. So we know each other from college. We've known each other, that means 2004. We've known each other at least 15 years. Mm-hmm. And a great friendship has blossomed, even though I've had his car towed and ruined his birthday cake, and, all of the above. If you don't know that story, I'll be brief. But someone dropped a comment, right? I think it was on your post, Josh, about getting it towed. So he came. Josh was in California, and a while ago, I don't know, almost over a year ago.
It was my birthday last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was February.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So Josh was out here, and he was kind enough to drive. He wasn't in my city. He was kind enough to drive all the way here to come on the podcast. We filmed an episode. We drove around. It was his birthday, the day that we filmed it. So we went and got birthday cake, and we went to a comic book store. I had a good day, a few hours, and then we sat here and recorded. And I didn't think to tell him to make sure he parked not under the structure, because we're from Indiana in the Midwest where parking is aplenty, because there's not that many people. And I'll take every opportunity I can to shit on California. It is what it is. And so he parked underneath the structure, and we came back outside. He was ready to go. Actually, we were both going to go together to see, I think it was Falzone, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Or
we had
someone else.
tickets to
Yeah.
see Mike
Yeah.
Falzone, like a couple other people, but it was like in LA.
Favorite comedian wanted to go
Yeah.
see on his birth. Josh wanted to go see his favorite comedian on his birthday, and his car got towed. And then we went to the tow yard, and it was a whole mess. And Josh was very gracious about it. And all he got out of the day was pizza and a sore throat, probably from doing too many hours of a podcast.
And a fun podcast.
But yeah, it
Dude,
was
and
fun
a
for
great
me.
story. Come on, I have a story in the bag for any party I go to from here on out.
That's true. You do. I'm glad that you can find that silver lining. But
Yeah.
that's the story of Josh's first time on Not Your Mother's Podcast. So now we do it this way, so no one gets towed, and we're good. Although I should check where I'm parked.
I was gonna
So,
say I was saying to that guy that said that they'll find a way to issue
yeah,
me a virtual one.
that's what it
I
was.
parked on my street, but they'll get me anyway.
Oh, they'll figure it out. All right. So, yeah, exactly, Ruthie. We all know a few pastors that need to watch that and figure out how to be good humans. John Hunter, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. All right, so let's talk. I think we got a lot of things, a lot of ground to cover. I was very brave today. Well, I got very busy, but I was also very brave and didn't write a lot of notes for us, which is not the norm. But I'm excited because I know that we're going to be able to still have good conversation because we have the basic subjects that we want to talk about. So what I started the podcast with a few minutes ago before you came on, Josh, was I wanted to let everyone know that a lot of us, especially those of you that are in here watching right now, and probably people that will watch later on as well, a lot of us have done a lot of Bible studying, not for lack of a better term. That's what we've done. We grew up learning, memorizing scripture. A lot of us can still rattle off a few verses here and there. Some of us have whole chapters. I think I had Psalm 100, which is like 5 verses, let's be fair. But I think I had a whole chapter memorized at one point. Not 119, I can tell you that. But like a lot of us have done a lot of what we would call Bible study. And in my opinion, and a lot of you will share this with me, it was flawed for a lot of reasons. But the Bible study we were doing, the means to the end of that Bible study, the means and the end of that Bible study weren't really there to help us better ourselves. They were there to get us more ingrained in the multi-level marketing scheme that was a religion we were a part of. They were there to keep us in check. They were there to serve as these kind of disciplinary side rails, if you will, or bumpers, if you will, for, this is going to remind me not to do that sin or look at that thing or fall into this wickedness. And in reality, the Bible, I'm not saying it's not meant for that and can't be used for that, because clearly it has been and still continues to be used for those purposes. But the Bible there's a lot more to it as far as how it can be applied, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. So Josh, claim to be whatever you want. I'm just going to say this right now. I'm no theologian. I'm no Bible scholar. I've got the book. I've got the books. I've got, hey, what did we talked about the other day? Didn't we? Or talking to someone else? I've got Haley's. I've got Wilmington's.
Yeah, Wilmington's was the big one.
Yeah, the big green one.
Yeah.
That you had to buy. But I don't claim to be any kind of a scholar. I'm definitely interested, though, in what Josh has to share, because myself and Josh have had conversations about this before. And I don't feel like we covered this very in depth the last time that we had you on the podcast, Josh. We may have done it on yours. We may have done it on Good Humans, but I don't recall if we did or not. Do you recall if we covered this on the last time or no?
I don't think on yours. You and I talked a little bit about some of it on my podcast.
Okay.
Because no matter how much my podcast is focused on like talking to good humans, all of this bleeds into it most of the time. Because it's just my experience. But I don't think we've like purposely gone in depth like on the Bible before.
Cool. So resources, I'm putting you on the spot, Josh, but do you have any authors that you'd recommend and or books that you would say kind of led you to what I would like to call, and rephrase it if you need to, but what I would call kind of a different understanding or a different perspective of the Bible itself?
Yes. Lots. So,
okay.
Cool. Depending on who's listening. So I'll just issue a COA for myself as well, since you did. Nobody has it figured out. I don't have it figured out.
Yeah.
So I'm full of crap. Everybody's full of crap.
Yep.
And all all I am going to be talking about, all I ever talk about when I talk about stuff like this is I'm just parroting people that are smarter than me. So like Rob Bell, Richard Rohr, Ram Dass, even Peter Rollins, like Pete Holmes.
Not Henry Rollins.
Not Henry Rollins, Peter Rollins, not the rock star, the philosopher.
Right. I have to make that distinction because I'm the one that always forgets. So
yeah.
Thank you.
even oh man, I always forget his name. The guy that came up, the guy that originated the idea of the hero's journey.
So not Joel Osteen. I don't know.
Not Joel Osteen. Don't read a lot of Joel Osteen. I don't anyway. No, but as far as resources
I have
go,
3 of his books. I just haven't read any of them.
I do think I own his big one.
Yeah.
What is it?
I've got it, but I can't remember what it's called. It's catchy, I'm sure.
Yeah, whatever it is. I'm pretty sure I've got that one.
Live a Better Life, something along those lines.
Oh yeah, A Better Life Now or something. Who knows? It's all the same thing. But yes. Sorry if you like Joel Osteen, he's fine. But
I do.
the reason I start off by saying that is because depending on who's watching this,
yeah,
some of those names are like automatic no's.
Right.
Which I hate that idea too. I hate the idea that you'd turn off truth from any source.
Yeah.
So the resources that I can recommend are if you're sort of starting and want just a different perspective on the Bible, Rob Bell's What is the Bible is a perfect place to start. The idea for him behind writing that book was all of us approach things like this with questions like, is this true? Is it perfect? Is it this? Is it that? And just by asking those questions, you're already putting presuppositions on it. Like it has to be true or untrue. It has to be perfect or unperfect. And he says, instead of doing that, why don't you just approach it with the question, what is it? And then just let it be what it is.
Right.
And then he also gives...
Just for a second, I want to let people know. I'm turning on my computer. I'm going to write that comment. I just don't want to interrupt you when I do it. But I'm going to write that comment really quick and drop in that where can people find Not Your Mother's Podcast? I want to get that up there. But while you're talking, I want to try to do it while you're talking. So continue, please. I'm sorry.
All right. I'll see if I can stretch it out as long as it takes for you to do that. But the reason I love Rob Bell's What is the Bible is because he not only tries to tell you to just let it be what it is, but he then goes into specific stories in the Bible and gives you context and history and culture and like all the inside jokes that are happening in this story that we didn't get and most people don't get in a church when they're hearing a sermon. And it helps you appreciate what's actually happening in this thousands-year-old book that's being used to club people over the head. And like even the Old Testament, like I used to say that I can't defend the Old Testament because there are stories about killing people because they're homosexual or sequestering women for a week at a time because they were on their period. Like there's indefensible things in the Bible for sure. And I used to have a really hard time with that. And now that I have a different perspective and understanding of it, it's a story of human progress. Like, of course, there were points at which we should not be proud of the way we acted, but that's included because we need to learn from that and move forward. So What is the Bible is a really good resource. Anything Richard Rohr writes, Richard Rohr is a Franciscan friar. So he's a lot more traditionalist than somebody like Rob Bell. But Richard Rohr just wrote a book called The Universal Christ, which is incredible. But he's a prolific writer. He's written quite a bit. So anything that he writes is really good. Peter Rollins has a book called The Idolatry of God, which
I like the title.
It's so good. It talks about the idea that we've sort of like transactionalized Christianity and we've turned God into this goal or this like attainable thing. Like we've turned Christianity into capitalism, but just for our soul instead of our pocketbook. And so he talks about the idea of like, I mean, Rob Bell said it in that, there's a really good documentary about Rob Bell called Heretic. It's available on iTunes. I don't know where else.
Nice.
Probably most other streaming sites. But Rob Bell has a quote in there, and he says, if Jesus came back today and saw that somebody had started a religion worshiping him, he'd be appalled. And
Makes
Peter
sense.
Rollins taps into that quite a bit in The Idolatry of God, and how a truly loving, all-knowing, all-powerful being would be very unconcerned about us, worshiping and adoring him, and more concerned about our well-being.
And that makes sense. Like that seems more plausible to me than bow before me and I'm the shit. Like that really does. Like I don't
We
know. Like I know everyone's. I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just
No, you're good.
we most of us, what we worship, I'm speaking in broad terms, so sorry if this does not describe you, but most of us, the God we worship is a ultra version of us.
Ours.
It's just a human, but it's an all-powerful human. So this God we worship gets jealous and angry and is petty about whether or not we keep dumb commandments that aren't, like, don't matter. And then he's like keeping a tally and trying to decide whether he's going to be good to us or not. And when we stray away from him, quote unquote, he won't come get us. He'll just wait for us to come back on the right path. Like, those are all things that humans would do.
Yes.
That's
That's
not
human nature.
that's not a thing. Like, a perfect father wouldn't make his children beg for him to meet their needs. He would just meet their
Oh.
needs. So the God that most of us worship, I think, is just a very powerful version of us, with human
Yeah.
emotions and human pettiness and anger and whatever. And I just am not interested in that kind of a God, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the God that so many of us. What's sad is that's the God that so many of us grew up on. And so
Yeah.
that's what we've come to know. And those who have left the IFB or left that kind of thinking, I think it's hard for us to arrive at a new God. Whether, like I was talking about it yesterday, it's kind of like you want to swing that pendulum so far the other way. Like, there is no God. I want to be an atheist or agnostic or whatever it is. And there's no judgment on wherever you land. You land where you're happy to land, of course, but it is still a difficult decision to, once you're out of everything, or as you're releasing yourself from all this mess, trying to figure out what you really believe about God, or who God is, or what he or she means to you is I think it's very tricky, and there's a lot of pitfalls to be found there. And I'm not saying anything against that search. I think a lot of us, it's important for us to have that search, but I think these books or this kind of research on the Bible itself can be really insightful.
One other book I'd recommend is, I'm about halfway through it, but it's by Reza Aslan. It's called, I think it's just called Zealot.
You mentioned that to me.
And it's funny, in the library, it's in the biography section, because he's classified it as a biography,
No,
not biology
biography.
section. And this is with zero whiskey in my system.
Same.
But he's classified it as a biography, and so and there's not a lot of, like, actual recorded history about Jesus. And
Right.
So what he's done is taken what is available and supplemented it with what we do know about the history of that time, and filled in some of the cultural gaps and other things like that. So that's a really good resource as well.
It sounds similar to Rob's book as far as like trying to create something, not so much a timeline, but just a defining the times and the kind of stuff.
Context.
Because there's so much. It's context, because there's so much stuff that we read in the Bible that's just, to me, is incredibly bizarre. There's so much stuff that, as I'm reading it, I think like that can't be what? Like that either that can't be real, or what a time to be alive, because I can't imagine trying to rationalize these things that these people in the Old Testament, some New Testament, but mostly Old Testament, some of the things that are going on. Is there any I'm putting you on the spot, so forgive me if you don't recall this, but I remember you talking, I don't know if you talked about it on here or on your podcast, but you talked about turning the other cheek and what that actually meant. Is
Dude,
that
that's
something
my
you can call
favorite.
I love that one,
Yes.
but I don't recall it well, and I'm hoping that you do.
Okay. This is my favorite example. There's a lot. We
Okay.
just talked about one the other day with like when Jesus spit in the dirt and like made the mud and healed the guy by putting it on
Yes,
his eyes.
if you can
Um,
bring that one up too after this one, I would be indebted to you. I think that'd
yeah.
be, if you can recall it, that
There's
would be
dude,
super helpful.
there's so many. And this is what I'm saying. Like I'm not the smartest guy. Like I'm just a
Just
guy
picked up some books, right?
that I read some books and like I looked a little bit outside of like the very narrow window that we were
Yes.
given. It's not
Yep.
hard to find this stuff. But like, okay, so
No.
turning the other cheek. So we were taught, I think probably most people that go to a Western Christian church were taught that turning the
Yes.
other cheek means no matter how much somebody's beating up on you and berating you and whatever, you never retaliate. You take the path of nonviolence. You never do anything back. You just always ignore it and take it like a pansy.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to censor myself. So
Yeah. Yeah. I heard it. I saw it.
it's not, which is fine. Like nonviolence is
Yeah.
great. Like that's a
Sure.
great thing to teach. But that's such a neutered version of what's happening there that it's like it's so sad that like the rest of it isn't being told. So here's what's going on.
Right.
So in Jewish society, well, in most like civilized society back then, there was caste systems, right? There's classes of people. So there's the lowest, like somewhere in the middle, and like maybe like a few like levels in the middle, and then there's like the upper echelon, like the very rich, like
Right.
the ruling class, right? And then you have like the politicians who are like the best of the best. So back then, if you struck someone with a closed fist, which would be your right hand, so like this is just culture. This
Right.
is not like if you get in a fist fight nowadays, like you're using both fists and probably your legs and
Right.
biting people and like whatever. You're just doing
Right.
whatever you can to win. But
There are
like
no rules.
we're just talking about like cultural norms. Like if you hit somebody with a
Yeah.
closed fist, that meant like they were an equal to you.
Gotcha.
So it would be right hand across left cheek, like a
Right.
right hook. So like you'd be
Mhm.
getting hit on your left cheek by someone's right hand, a
Right.
closed fist.
Right.
If they were equal to you, that's how they would strike you. If you were lower than them, if they considered you lesser than them, they would strike you with the back of their left hand on your right cheek. Okay.
Gotcha.
So this is like a very, very, very caste conscious, like societal level, like class conscious society. Like
Right.
that was everything. There were rules. So, and then there was the Jewish people at the time were very connected to like land. Land ownership was everything. They were
Oh
very
yeah.
connected to their land. Jerusalem was the Holy Land. So if you owned land, then you were like kind of somebody. You were somewhere in the middle. But
Right.
this is also at a time where Roman governance had come in, and so they were being just put under Rome's thumb. So you had certain members of Jewish society that decided to work for the Romans, which meant oppressing their own people. So they were very hated, but they were
Sure.
so like they were rich, super rich, because they had basically decided to just change sides. And
Right.
so those people were hated and reviled as well. So then you had a like kind of like what's happening now. You had like a
Mhm.
disappearing middle class. You had people that like if you couldn't pay your debts, you had to give up your land to pay that debt.
Right.
And so then your land would just get absorbed by these a-hole Jewish people that were
Artists.
already like
Okay.
oppressing their own people.
Right.
And so then like you just had nothing else to like give and you had nowhere else to go and you were basically just a slave laborer at that point.
Right.
So you had some very, very oppressed, dehumanized, discouraged, like very, very depressed people
Right.
under like very oppressive rule. And so
And I don't know. You're going to know better than me, but I wouldn't say maybe that's the majority of the population, but that is a big, probably a large
huge
part of the
chunk.
population fell into that
Yeah.
that specific caste system.
Yeah. And even the ones that weren't at the bottom, like there was still like the middle before
Right.
were at the top. So, and people were like, everyone knew who everyone was. Like there was no doubt if two people met on the street, they knew who was over
Yeah.
who.
Yep.
It was in how they dressed, and just like people just knew.
Well, now,
So
like, I mean,
yeah,
obviously there are
yeah,
people that don't have that much money but are savvy with how they dress. But like, if you're very poor, if you're, if you live on the street, it's usually, and I'm not trying to be unkind, but it's usually pretty obvious that
yeah,
that's your current lifestyle or situation
yeah,
by what you're wearing. So yeah, it's not uncommon or unheard of to think, okay, yeah, that's their lot
right,
in life because of how they dress. Yeah.
yeah. This is the context in which Jesus is telling this story.
Yeah.
And he ends a parable by telling people, if someone strikes you, and he says specifically, if someone strikes you on your right cheek, okay, so that's a left hand, the back of a left hand on
Right.
your right cheek. If someone
Right.
strikes you on the right cheek, you turn the other cheek to them again. So let's just imagine this. So like somebody's striking you with the back of their left hand, they're saying very overtly, you are
Right.
less than me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a Roman soldier to a Jewish citizen. This is a rich Jewish citizen to a lower Jewish citizen.
Yes.
This is like the rule. So like if I hit you with the back of my left hand, I'm saying you're in a lower class than I am. You're subservient to
Right.
me, like I rule over you.
Yeah.
So what happens then? Like if I hit you with the back of my left hand on your right cheek and you turn the other cheek, you're turning your left cheek to me now.
Right.
Okay. I'm not going to be able to backhand you with my left hand
Right.
on your other cheek.
Right.
It's just not possible. So my option then is to strike you with a closed fist, my right hand, on your left cheek, which if I do that, I'm then acquiescing to the fact that you are indeed
We're
equal to me,
same
not
level.
less than
Yeah.
me.
Yep.
But you've also put me in a position where if I don't strike you, you have won, because you have just taunted me in front of anyone who just saw this
Right.
interaction to strike you again. So I
I
either
love it.
walk
Yeah.
away or I strike you, but either way I lose.
Right.
So like there's this whole other dimension to Jesus saying
Right.
turn the other cheek than just nonviolence and pacifism, which was his jam. But like
Sure.
he's giving, what he's doing in that situation, he's not only saying if you strike somebody back, like you're a dead man, they'll prosecute you, they'll stone you
Right.
like on the spot. So he's not only saying like be smart about it, but he's saying there's a way to recover your humanity and your
Right.
dignity and still know that you are a human being that matters in the world, and protest the current system in a nonviolent way.
I
And
love it.
you just took back all of the power in that
Right.
situation.
Right.
So this like, and this is what's called third way thinking. There's violence or pacifism, and for the
Right.
longest time it was just that dichotomy, and Jesus
That
comes
was
in and
it.
says there's another way to do this.
Right.
And so this is just one example, but and this is why he was so dangerous. Like this is dangerous in this system.
Oh yeah.
He's like he's pushing back for sure, and you know he's doing it, but you can't put your finger on any
Yeah.
specific thing because he was smart about it. And so
Right.
that's why Jews and Romans alike hated him. Like the rich Jews and Romans alike hated him because he was pushing back against the current system, but he was doing it in such a way that he was not only telling people it doesn't always have to be this way, he was telling people you're still a human and you still have human dignity, and you don't have to be dirt like you've been treated.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so that's we didn't get any of that like growing up. We just heard turn the other cheek
No.
and
And
like
would
take
you
it
say
lying
like
down,
exactly?
which
Would
is
you
like
say
that's
that's
the
where
opposite of maintaining your human dignity.
exactly? Yeah. You are lower than. I mean, and you think about the kind of, and I know it's probably extravagant to say caste system, but how we grew up, what we grew up in, there was definitely a system of like, you're unless you're
Oh, for sure.
IFB royalty, then you're shit. Like no one really cares. Like
In a
you're gonna.
local church, there was like the pastor and his kids, and like that was
Mhm.
like and then there was like assistant pastor was like right underneath it, and then like any
Right.
staff, and then there was like
Some
the
deacons, youth
commons.
pastor.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the commons did most of the work.
all the work.
And yeah, all the
Yeah,
work. and got no thanks for it. So would you say that story, of course, that's not just the story, but that parable and what Jesus is saying, while that's really eye-opening and really helpful to hear that, would you say that kind of thinking applies to much more, not that kind of thinking, but that idea applies to much more of the Bible than just that story, where there's more to it? It's not just,
Yeah.
turn the other cheek and be subservient. It's, I'm arming you with a way to, kind of say up yours to the system, but also, protecting you at the same time. So there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of levels to that. Would you say that is throughout the scripture? There are multiple.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because like the whole thing about like backhand of the backside of the left hand or closed fist from the
Right.
right hand, that's not in the
Mhm.
Bible. That's nowhere in the Bible. That's
Right.
taken from historical context and study
Right.
from other resources that tell us about society at the time. Like
Mhm.
there were other like Josephus was a prolific historian like right around that time. Like there are other resources that tell us what life was like. But you don't get like Jesus didn't lay out all that context in that story because there was no reason for him
No,
to do it because he was talking to Jewish people in the first
they
century.
already knew all that. Right.
So they already know that, but we don't if we're only reading the one thing. So then we miss all this extra nuance and all these other levels. And the most powerful thing about that story is missed if you
Context.
don't know the rest of it. The other
Right.
story that we were talking about where Jesus heals
Yes.
a blind man.
Yes, I love this.
So
You told me this the other day. This is so good.
all through the Bible, Jesus heals people, right? Like we were talking one time, a
Yeah.
lady just touched his robe and was healed. Like
Right.
he didn't even, and he was like, turned around and was like, I felt power go out of me
What happened?
who touched me or whatever.
Right.
So like he didn't even have to try, right? Like this is a guy that's like healing just hundreds of people all over the place. He fed 5,000 people with 2 pieces of bread and a fish. Like,
Yeah.
so, or like, maybe it was the other way around. I can't remember, but like,
Whatever.
so
Just a
like
few loaves and fishes.
we're talking about a guy that could do incredible things, right? So, and he's healed other blind people before this story.
Yes.
This is like
Yes.
deep in the New Testament. He's healed
Mm-hmm.
other blind people by saying, now you can see.
Be
He's
healed.
healed lame people by saying, go and walk. Like, didn't even touch them,
Right.
just spoke the words, right?
Right.
So he and his disciples encounter this guy, and this guy is blind, and the people around him are telling him he's been blind since birth. He's never been able to see. And this man traveled quite a ways because people would do this, traveled quite a ways
Yep.
to see Jesus and was hoping to be healed. And there's a huge crowd gathered around because people followed him everywhere he went.
Right.
So there's his disciples. There's probably hundreds at that point of people following him. And there's this blind man in the street, a homeless blind man who's begging for money. And so in this instance, for whatever reason, Jesus stoops down and spits in the dirt. Like
Gross.
it's gross. Like we know what that's like now. Spits in the
Right.
dirt, reaches down, digs his fingers into the spit and dirt that he just made, grabs that
Right.
mud, which is his loogie and dirt and everything else,
Right.
wipes it on the guy's eyes, and that's how he heals this particular man. Well, right before this, Jesus' disciples were talking to him and they're saying, hey, there are other people healing and doing miracles in your name.
Right.
And we told them to stop because we don't know them. You don't know them.
Right.
And then they go on to say there's people doing it in other people's names, right? Like there's other people doing miracles and they're not doing it in your name. That's even worse,
Right.
right? And Jesus turns around. So this is before Jesus stoops down and heals this guy.
Right.
But Jesus turns around and says like, hey, are they doing good for people?
Right.
Then leave them alone.
Who cares? Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, and like over and over again, things like this happen, and it's very obvious. Jesus is not building a cult. He's not trying to build a following. He's trying to get this through their freaking hard heads that it's not about like, that's not what it's about at all. That's not what he was here for. So he has that conversation, turns around, spits in the dirt, takes that and heals this guy. So we've got now the added context that there are, like the idea of an itinerant preacher, an itinerant rabbi traveling around and prophesying and healing and doing miracles is not a new thing. It's been happening for decades at this point, maybe centuries. Like people are very used to it. And it's just sort of a cliche. It's such a cliche that there were jokes, like there other historians record jokes about itinerant preachers like Jesus. Like Jesus was a punchline.
Yeah,
Like he was great, but he was a punchline. So then
sure.
he stoops down and he does this with the dirt on the guy's eyes and says he's healed, and the guy walks away. And so this is the and like you don't like you wouldn't spit on people. Like this is ultra like a
No,
very important cultural thing. Like you wouldn't spit on people.
right.
You certainly wouldn't spit in the dirt and then like wipe
No,
people's eyes with
they-
it.
but
Like people used to wash each other's feet as like a sign of deference and like
yes,
respect and love. So this is not something that people would have done, but like in this moment, like there's a reason that that conversation happened right before Jesus healed this man, and it's because Jesus is making fun these other people that would go around and healing. There were magicians, there were necromancers, there were wizards, there were like healers, there were all kinds of people, and they would make this big show. They would have all this fancy stuff. They would make a
right.
huge show out of
Well,
it, and they would collect
would
money.
you would you compare it to? I mean, I don't know how many people have seen the Inspector General, but like having the wagon. You know what I
I
mean?
was
Like, would
just
that be
thinking about that
similar?
movie the other day. That's a deep cut,
Yes,
dude. Yes,
great
exactly.
imitation. But
Like
like show
those
up and have all
snake
the
oil.
snake oils were the words looking for.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
snake oil
Exactly
salesman.
like that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
big show, like they're making a big show out of it. And like historians are pretty vague on whether they're actually helping people or not. Some say yes, some say no. Um my money's on no, but like we'll never know because we
Yeah,
weren't there.
most likely.
Um so like all these other guys are and women are traveling around and
Yeah.
making this huge show of it, right? He has this
Mhm.
conversation, stoops down on the dirt, spits, takes that, and heals the guy. So
Right.
without all that context, we're like, what in the hell? Why would he do that's so strange? But like that's
Yeah.
the kind of stuff that like the sermon wouldn't be about that. It would be about like this guy had faith to travel and go see Jesus, which is great.
Right.
He
Right.
did. But like there's a whole deeper thing of Jesus saying, like, this is all bullshit. Like,
Right.
sorry,
Right.
I just did
No.
I just did
No,
the thing.
it's true though.
But like there's all these other like showy charlatan type people
Yeah.
running around and doing the same thing, and that's not what it's about. And so he's like, you guys are putting on a show, cool, I'm gonna spit in the dirt and rub it on this guy's eyes and heal him.
Ooh.
And so he's like he's punk rock all the time.
Yeah.
Like he's
Yeah.
bucking the norms and challenging the status quo. And but again, none of that extra context is recorded
We
in
don't
the
get any
Bible.
of that. Yeah.
You have to go outside of that and study the culture and the history and like societal norms and all that stuff. Like, but his parables and stories are packed with like inside jokes and references that we wouldn't get unless we studied it. But
Right.
nonetheless, we're taking this book and just reading it literally in English
Yeah.
in 2019 and saying this is what he meant.
Like we
It's
have a clue.
it's it's mind-boggling. I don't like it.
I agree with you 100%. And I mean, obviously, we're not all in the same place, and I'm not in the place where I read it. I can't remember the last time I read it. If I'm in church, I'll read it. If I'll go up to Brian Patterson's church, or I'll go to my dad's church when I'm home for Christmas here in a couple months. But that's pretty much the extent of it. But I appreciate, again, the fact that you've done the homework and the studying, and something that, excuse me, that me and you talked about more recently on a phone call was that you're like, and you just said, I'm just a guy. I just picked up some books, cracked open some books, and looked at some stuff. But I think the difference that we're seeing is a lot of the pastors that we grew up listening to, evangelists. I mean, everyone from Bob Gray Sr. to Alan Donnelly, all these guys. Like, it wasn't. I'm not trying to justify anything they've done or didn't do, but I don't think it was for lack of reading, because these guys were always reading, and it wasn't just the Bible. Like, they were reading Schofield's notes, and they were reading all these other, like, Jack Scott's books, Jack Hyles' books, like all these books. But the problem is when you get so concentrated on these are the only books I can read, everything else is heresy, you're just ruminating the same shit over and over again. You're not learning anything new. You're not pushing any boundaries. You're finding different ways to say the same thing over and over again. And who does that help? It helps you. It helps your ministry, air quotes. You know, it helps you sell more books and have more camp meetings and get more people to come to your church. But who does it, like, in the way of humanity in the bigger picture? Who's it help? I don't think it's help. I don't feel like it's helping anyone. That's my
No,
opinion.
intellectual inbreeding doesn't help anybody.
There you go. That's good way to put it.
And that's all that is. Like nowadays we call it
Yeah.
an echo chamber, but
Yes.
it's really just inbreeding. Like all you're doing is regurgitating the same ideas. Dude, it's like spiritual telephone, but the information you started with was terrible.
Yeah.
Like you started with somebody that had played telephone all the way up to you, and then you put your like brand on it, and then you're like spitting it out to all these other people, and then all these other people are just spinning it and like spitting it back to everyone else, and it's just going back and forth. And there's no outside perspective. There's no perspective. I was going to say there's no outside perspective, but there's just no perspective.
Like none. Yeah, whatsoever.
And so you just have the same bad, wow, I can't believe I'm going to use this phrase, but you have the same bad theology just going around and around and around. And like we started off with the easy stuff. Like those stories are like, there's additional context here that makes it better, right?
Right.
But like we're not even addressing the fact, or we haven't yet, that like Jesus was a Jew talking to first century Jews.
Right.
Everything he said was in a Jewish context, in a Jewish society, to Jewish people, except for the few trips that he made to places like Samaria.
Right.
And so we've got a Jewish man in the first century talking to Jewish people about spirituality with a Jewish understanding of the world and the Bible and spirituality, which means that Jesus, because he was a Jew, had no concept of hell, no concern for the afterlife, and no literal concept of an actual Satan. Like those are not things in Judaism. And there's a lot of like metaphor and a lot of myth in Judaism, and it's all to make a point. The entire first chapter of Genesis was written as a poem. It's not supposed to be a literal creation story. So
come back. Oh, sorry. Come back to that.
What,
Can
the
you
poem?
expand on that at all? That's very interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, and like in the original language that it was written in, which like we all say was Moses, right? Like we all somehow know that Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. But for thousands of years before that,
I think John Rice said it. So
it must be true. He had a plane, so
if John Rice said it, or if it was on TV, don't question it. It's true.
He sang loud and off key, so we should believe everything.
No, you're thinking roll off. You're thinking roll off.
Oh, that's right. I was thinking roll off.
John Rice did sing too, though. No, I think
John Rice was the Revival Fires guy.
Yeah.
Right?
No. Sword of the
Lord.
Wait,
that was Dennis Coral. Sword of the Lord was John Rice. Dude, so much.
That's good. You're so far removed. I wish I was far removed. I was forgetting these things. Hang on. Let me back up, though. I'm going to go on a tangent. I'm sorry. Christina, good to see you here. And Jessica as well. What's the old... There's 2 old tapes. There's one where Erica Pacey sings. It's a Howes Anderson tape, I think. What's the... Damn, I can't remember it exactly. But there's also one that has some narration from...
Oh, that's... I know who you're... Jack Patterson.
Jack Patterson. But is that the one that has the narration from John Rice? There's one that has narration from John Rice on it. And I
there's one that's got like a little... like a snippet of a sermon or a couple snippets of a sermon or something like that. I think it's Jack Patterson.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And he sings like Lester Roloff for like 1 or 2 of the songs. Yeah. He's like doing a really bad impression.
It's great. Yeah.
Of a really obscure person anyway. It's strange.
Right. It's Alan Donnelly doing Jack Hyles. It's the same stuff.
Which, by the way, I am coughing tonight, so I apologize. I know it's not pleasant.
No,
but...
you're good. You're good. But
I don't remember what
that first Genesis being a poem was very interesting to me.
Well, the first chapter for sure. So
first chapter. Okay.
Yeah, so like the idea that Moses wrote these, like, and these originated with Moses is crazy too, because this, for like thousands of years, like since prehistory, this was all oral tradition, like passed down from generation to generation. Like The
Right.
Bible in oral, like at least the Old Testament in oral form, existed for thousands of years before it was ever written down.
So there's
Thousands of
not
years.
not not to belittle the Bible, but there's a lot to get wrong there. Then, right? I mean, if you
Oh,
think about,
100%.
you
And
know,
that's like the whole thing. Like, again, like, don't, please, anybody watching, don't trust me on this. Look it up, go
yeah,
read.
yeah,
But the idea back then, like, so we have this like very like factual view of history, right? Like
yeah.
we're all, I was just talking to Christopher the other day, Christopher Swan, and I told him like we're all like part-time private detectives. Like we're all
Oh
like,
yeah.
but what's the facts? Like what actually happened?
Let me go to
And
Google. Yeah,
now we have the internet, so like we can look anything we want up, and like most of the time, if we dig far enough, we can find accurate,
you'll
true
find it.
information.
Yeah,
Literature as it existed back then, the point was not, is this factually correct? Like, are we getting every detail about this historical
right.
story exactly right? It was much more open to interpretation. And the point of recording history back then was not to say, this actually factually happened. There actually was a worldwide flood, and Noah actually got to every animal on the ark. It was, this is how our fundamental understanding of the God we've always known is changing. That's the point of that story, not that there was a worldwide flood. So
Right.
the point of these stories was to get you to understand a certain thing. It was about cultural history and cultural memory, not about actual factual
Back.
history. And
Very
like
interesting.
you can ask any dude, if anyone watching knows a Jewish person, ask a Jewish person. Like this is just how they understood things and how they recorded things. So like this oral history, like there's some like truth in it, like as we understand truth, like facts. Like some of these people did exist, and like the lineages like were very important, and so they would keep track of
Right.
those. But like
First and
they
Second
would,
Chronicles. Can you
right.
imagine trying to orally relate First
I
and
mean,
Second Chronicles?
but they would though. Like that's the thing. Like the lineages were
This is
important enough for
true.
them to keep
Yeah.
those like as accurately as possible, because
Oof.
like there was a time before writing was a thing, so they
Right.
had to.
That shit needed to be written, not written down, but the equivalent thereof.
Right. So the idea that then there would be
Hmm.
a factual recording of the creation story is not in keeping with the way
No.
this culture understood and recorded history. So
Right.
the idea of the creation story, this is a, it was literally written in the original language as a poem. It is a poem that goes on for
Mm.
at least the first chapter. I think it's actually the first chapter and a half, like part of the
Okay.
second chapter as well. Um, but it's not about like on the first day he did this and on the second day he did this and it went in this
Right.
order, not in this order, and blah, blah, blah. Like God made man first and then took the rib from Adam, and blah, blah, blah. Like it's not about the facts. It's about like what is this telling us, which is again like
Right.
it's about our understanding of the creator, of God, of the universe, whatever, and
Yeah.
saying like nothing nothing mattered before we knew
God.
that there was more than us.
Right.
And so the world exists, and there must be some greater purpose. And so we were made in its image
Hmm.
to honor it, to partake in it, to whatever, to participate in the ongoing creation of the world. And
Yeah.
so like it's about the understanding of who we are and what we're doing here, which is why the idea of original sin is so crazy, because it's not even, even if you're looking at the facts, it's not even factually accurate that like we were originally bad, because the
Right.
Bible starts with and it was good over and over and over again, including when
Well,
God
yeah, and we
created
weren't.
humans.
Yeah, and even if you look at, I mean, original sin, I understand. Okay, the apple and all that. I think that's what we're referring to there. But
Yeah,
original sin, if that means we were originally bad, that's still not true because Adam and Eve were not originally bad. Like, yeah,
yeah,
I don't like. I know this sounds silly and very millennial of me, but I don't even use bad and good anymore. Just because Chloe, it actually helps her development. But
good.
this original, this idea of like we were created, therefore we were bad is kind of like, well, that's shitty.
Well,
Then what good am I ever going to be? Number one, and number two, if you look at the scripture itself, that's not even the case.
that's like you're leaving off the entire first chapter. Like if
Right.
that's where you start, like you're starting in chapter 2. Who starts a book in
Uh huh.
chapter 2? So like even
I
if
mean,
even if you're looking at it literally,
yeah,
you can't honestly talk about the idea of original sin and think that like you're presenting all the facts. Like
exactly.
even according to like the Bible that you're referencing,
No,
the
right.
deepest, first, truest thing about humanity is that it is good,
Yeah,
and we are good. So anyway, so that whole first chapter and a half, was written as a poem, not as like a literal recording of the creation
right,
story. It is a poem, and so like it's like reading a Robert Frost poem
right.
and going, well, is this true? Was there really a man that had a
Were there
choice
really?
between one path in the woods and the other path in the woods? And he knows
There
everybody
were.
goes this way, and he decided to go that way. Like, is that really
When did this
true?
happen?
Where is
What
this path?
what date? On what
Yeah.
date did this find this path? I
Like,
like that. I
no,
like that.
nobody's saying that. Like, everybody's saying, oh, I get what you're trying to convey.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
using metaphor, and you're using literal existing things to move me to think a certain way and to see things a certain way and to gain a certain perspective.
And
And
I sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, 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 you.
So I wanted to, and I'm bringing this up as just kind of like, hey, let's talk about it if you have some thoughts on it or if you know more about it. It's been so long since I've done. I'm tired. I work 24/7. But it's been so long since I've done any history, done any studying or anything like that. But excuse me, isn't I mean from pre-Bible until hey, who's in here? Someone just joined. Bannister, good to see you here, bro. From
Bannister.
pre-Bible all the way through George Lucas, isn't there the two or three different let's say the two different things, the narrative of the chosen one and the narrative of the flood, to say those are the only, the
Yep.
Bible is the only true and real version of that. I don't think, and
The
I'm not disparaging Jesus or the Bible at all. I'm just saying, like, these are stories that have been told before the Bible and after the Bible. And I'm not saying that there is or isn't an Anakin Skywalker. Maybe someone got that done at the courthouse. I don't know. But, like, isn't it true that that's kind of a common, those two stories are kind of common stories from mythology through current science fiction?
Yeah, so I was just looking it up because I can't remember the name of it. There is a there is a work of literature that predates the Bible, also by thousands of years. I think it's
Mhm.
thousands, which tells the same exact flood story, the
Yeah.
same exact Savior story,
Mhm.
and a few others, like I think the Exodus in some form or another, like
Yes.
an oppressed people, and then their like triumphant exit out of the oppression, and then the oppressing people being punished. Like there are major themes like these. That's what's crazy too. These stories in the Bible aren't even original to the Bible. There are
Right.
works of literature that predate the Bible by thousands of years that have these same exact stories. The Egyptians, for instance, one of their gods, I think it's Ra, I could be wrong,
Yeah. I'm gonna look
had
something up.
had the same exact like backstory mythology that Jesus had. Um, it was his birth was foretold. He was born of a virgin. A star lit the way to where he was born.
Wow.
Uh,
Even that too.
all of it, like all of it. And then the Caesars, dude. I think it's the Gospel of Mark, is written. If you study like the way the Roman coronation would work,
Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh. That's exactly it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like the Gospel of Mark, like if you study the way Roman coronations would work when they were like coronating or like crowning a new Caesar, there was like a ceremony to it. Like there was like steps in the ceremony. It was a very like honoring thing. So like they were like very like ceremonious about it. And I think it's the Gospel of Mark. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure is written as like a parody to that structure.
Ah.
And so the reason that Mark, I think it was Mark, which also to say Matthew, Mark, Luke, John wrote the Gospels is crazy too, because like
Why is that crazy? I don't disbelieve you. I'm just curious the reasoning there.
because most of them, I don't think any of them actually wrote to say the person whose name on the book is on the book wrote the book
It's the person who wrote
is
it is nuts.
way off, because like these are conglomerations of, again, and the first one wasn't written, I think, until like 60 years after all of those events happened.
They were dead.
And the latest one I think was like 150 years or something like that, like a very long time
Oh,
afterwards.
wow.
And so these were not written by these men; they were written
So,
by like followers of these men.
so to break it down,
If
it is
that makes sense.
possible. It is possible that that Luke told this whole story to someone who told it to someone else who told it
Yeah,
to someone else who told it to someone else who wrote it.
yeah, yeah.
But
Like
he didn't
most,
sit down and
right?
write it
Most
all
people
down.
back then could not read or write. The
So what?
vast majority of people could not read or write, so it was all still very oral tradition. People would go to the synagogue once a week to hear the scriptures read, if they
Right.
were lucky. If they were lucky enough to live in a village where they had actually a copy of anything. Um,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, what were
Yes.
we talking about? Oh, so
I
these,
got
like,
you
these
all on.
myths. So the Gospel of Mark is written as like a parody of the coronation
Mm-hmm.
ceremony for a new Caesar, and Caesars always had a
Right.
mythology behind them.
Mm.
And so, like,
Interesting.
because Caesars were gods, right? Like they
Right.
couldn't just be
Right.
common men. So when they would
Right.
coronate a Caesar, there would be a mythology to go along with him. And the Caesar that was Caesar during the time of Jesus' life, his
Right.
mythology, again, you can look this up, you don't have to trust me. His mythology was that his birth was foretold. He was born of a virgin. A star showed the way to where he was born. Like, so
That's great.
these are not new stories. These are just, which is
Right.
the whole reason that I get so passionate about the idea that, like, stop reading literality and
Right.
start asking yourself, what is this writer trying to get me to see?
Right.
What is his point?
Yeah.
um, because Mark knew exactly what he was doing when he parodied a coronation ceremony for a Caesar.
Right.
For, or not Mark, but like the people that wrote that book, like the
Yeah.
people that wrote that knew that they were laying it out that way, and they were doing it on purpose. It was a very,
Yeah.
like, dangerous political statement.
Yeah. For
and
sure.
and then to say that Jesus has the same mythology as the current Caesar was also a very dangerous political statement. Like, this is a
Of
very
course.
revolutionary figure. So
Mhm.
this stuff is being done on purpose, and you just have to dig a little bit to find out, like, oh my God, like, this is, there's like dangerous, incendiary, explosive things happening,
Yeah.
versus, like, if you just read the book of Mark and you're like, cool, some stories about Jesus.
About Jesus. Right. Um.
I don't know if I answered the question that you just asked.
No, no, you did. You did. No, no, that was really
Okay.
helpful. And I just want to welcome, I don't know if Caitlin's still here, but Caitlin and Jesse, good to have you guys here as well. The No, that's very interesting. That was the question, was, are there other, there's so many levels to the Bible. It's not just, like you said, on the surface or just a literal book, but like we were talking about the other, I just want to read this really quick because I got this pulled up. The, oh, I never even a password right the first time. The Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh dates back nearly 5,000 years and is thought to be perhaps the oldest written tale on the planet. In it, there is an account of the great sage. I've read this before. I know I have. Upnatchim, I can't read that right, who is warned of an imminent flood to be unleashed by wrathful gods. And that is on Time Magazine's website. It's called Before Noah. Oh, of course, has a picture of Russell Crowe. I don't know if anyone can see that. That's terrific. Before Noah, myths of the flood are far older than the Bible. So
Yeah.
very interesting. And I think I find the story of the flood very, again, going back to, it's funny because I am always, I wouldn't use the word triggered, but I'm always kind of set off anytime someone uses something similar to the phrase, why would a loving God and then, send to hell or do this?
Yeah.
Because that was, if you remember, anytime you go soul winning, you're running to JWs, if you were brave enough, I never was, but I was with people who were brave enough to confront Jehovah's Witnesses because they were a cult. We weren't, they were. And
Yeah.
anytime that you try to confront them, that was one of their big things. Why would a loving God send their children to burn in hell? Now, to be fair, I think the JWs are just as dangerous as the IFB. They have just as many sexual indiscretions and cover-ups. And I'm not defending the IFB. I'm just saying, like, I actually had a former member on the podcast.
That was interesting because that's the first time I've really heard much about them. I don't know anything about them other than when I can't remember her name when she was on.
Emma Valdez.
Emma.
And it
Yeah.
was interesting. Yeah, it was interesting because the stuff she brought up wasn't like this big scandal or something that the church. It was happening in her own little
Mhm.
sector of the church where she lived here in Southern California. So I'm not saying I'm not saying every single Jehovah's Witness church that happens in, but if it happened there, it's happening other places too. But they just do a real good job of keeping tight-lipped. I think they're even Tom Cruise doesn't help Scientology, but I think they're even better than Scientology at keeping shit locked down.
Dude, did you? I reposted a video a while
That
back of
video,
Tom Cruise
I haven't.
talking about
It's saved.
Scientology.
I haven't watched it. Is it just a bunch of mishmash? Is that all it is?
Dude, I can't. You can't follow him. It's like somebody that was trained in only the charisma of public speaking,
Right.
and then like sent on a public speaking tour with no message.
With,
And so this person was like, I'm going to be a motivational speaker, but I have nothing to say. But like super charismatic.
yeah, that's
So
not
like
on
there's
me.
part of you that's like, yeah, I'm on board. But like he's
Yeah,
just saying
but I don't know what
nothing
I'm on board for.
the whole interview. It's a 10-minute
I'll
video. I'm
watch
sure
it
the original interview is much longer than that, but like
longer. Yeah.
it's crazy.
Well, my brother did. My brother likes doing parodies. He hasn't been able to do it in a while. Hey, Ashley, thanks for hopping on. He did. I don't know if you saw his David Miscavige
I
parody,
did.
but it's pretty. Yeah, dude. Well,
Yeah.
there's so many. Like Andrew says, there's so many pregnant pauses that it's easy to get 3 minutes of him just
Yep.
like that's
Yep.
it. So there's a lot of fun
Yeah.
stuff out there, and I know we're way off track, but it's just fun to talk about. There are other. The IFB is not the only one. The Bible's not the only Bible. There's
Yeah.
more than one interpretation of all these things. And again, going back to, I don't know, there's just a lot to unpack, but going back to the origins and saying like, look, and again, I know there's people watching right now that, are very firm believers of the Bible, and we're not trying to discredit you or anything. We're just asking you to take a little bit different look or even a little deeper look at what you're reading or being taught. And if you've got the right kind of pastor, he's going to, I don't know, what is it, Thessalonians or what's the book that study these things to see their truths? I don't know the exact.
To show, I can tell you what the King James says.
Yeah, tell me.
Study to show thyself approved, which is basically
Yes.
like that's what he's saying. Like, don't talk out of your ass. Know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and because I think I could be wrong, but I think that's the same passage where he talks about being harmless as serpents or harmless as doves, wise as serpents.
Yes. Serpents. Yeah. Well,
But
I
he's
was
just
referring
saying.
to. I said it wrong. Go ahead. What were you saying though?
Oh no, he's just saying you ought to know what you're talking about, but that
Yes.
information shouldn't be like the fact that you may know some truth like means that you also with that truth have acquired the knowledge that truth is not meant to be used as a weapon.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
So
They were more noble than they or something because they studied to see if these things were true. Something like that.
oh, I do
That's
know
what
what
I
you're
was.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, if you've got the right kind of pastor, the right kind of church leadership, they're not going to have a problem with you looking a little bit closer or even just using outside resources to study your scripture closer. Because again, let's just be logical about it, which is where I love to land so many times. And it's hard to do that with scripture because there's so many people, and I have nothing against you, but you want to take it very literal and you want it to be, I want it to be literal too. Okay. I want that. And I thought that for so long, but the truth is the more that I looked at it and the more that I was taught by people who taught that it was literal, the more I realized like, I'm not literally going to go stone Chloe with rocks until she's dead because she was disobedient. Like that's just not a thing that I do. So like, I had to step back, and I've stepped even further back. I don't even want to look at it. But like Josh is actually taking the time to look at it, and the more we talk about it, the more I realize like it's an interesting book. It's a very insightful book. Proverbs is chock full of really helpful concepts that can help you live a better life. I believe that fully, and I'm not saying Proverbs is the only book that has any truth to it. But again, it was written a really long time ago, which doesn't discredit it or mean that it's full of bullshit. But it was written a really, really long time ago, and for us to think that in God, why am I blanking? Because I'm thinking 1776, and that's all wrong. 1611. If in 1611 we think they translated everything just right and got it all perfect in the castle where they ate hunks of venison and cheese by the pound and huge chunks of bread, and their bathrooms were medieval. If we think they got it all right back then, cool, but you're wrong. There's no way they did. So the fact that we have decided to land on pastor preaches it to me every week, and that's all, and that's good enough for me, and he's kind of my go-between. I know that people don't like to hear this, but it's the truth. He's a priest. These IFB pastors are priests. They're the go-between between. You don't go to a therapist. You go to your pastor for counseling. I know I'm on a rant now. You don't go to, you don't, what's the word? You don't go to your thesaurus. You don't go to your lexicon. You don't go to Wilmington's. You go to your pastor for a better interpretation. When the sermon's over, and we did. My dad always had one or two older guys or just kind of quirky guys in the church, every church we've been in, that would come after and be like, "Now, Brother Hardy, I don't know." And I always thought those guys were annoying and weird, but looking back, I'm like, no, they were actually like trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Yeah. And so, again, I guess all I'm trying to get at is, and I got to be careful because I watch viewers as I rant, and they tend to leave. But it's not a good habit. But it doesn't stop me from ranting. But like what I want to get to is the fact that if we think that they got everything right back in 1611, and we're comfortable sitting here and saying, look, I'm happy with just listening to what the pastor says, not studying it further, not using outside resources, not looking up additional works from that same time period, then I think we do ourselves a disservice. Look it up. Find out what was really going on during that same time period that Jesus was walking the earth, or even before then. Figure that out, because that, like what you're saying, Josh, that gives so much more context and helps us really learn what was going on in those when he was the Sermon on the Mount, his parables, these crazy antics when he's healing people with spittle in their eye. Like, what in the world? Like, there's more levels to it. The guys that interpreted it for King James, they didn't get all of it. There's more to it than that. Not LeBron James. It goes without saying.
The other King James. It's so. I was just talking to Evan Jones the other day about this, and then not to worship Joe Rogan too much, but then like the next day. Okay, perfect. I forgot where he was.
Hypocritical. Terrible. Yeah.
The next day. Sorry, I think I lost you for a second. But the next day, after I was talking to Evan, I watched Joe Rogan's latest comedy special, and he talks about this too. But like the idea that like we, and I say we as in like Christians.
Yes.
I don't know if I wouldn't call myself a Christian at this point, but Christians now are like, we got it figured out. It was written down. It was translated once, very long time ago.
That's it. I'm good.
And some people, for whatever reason, decided which accounts made it into the Bible and which ones didn't. And we're just going to ignore the fact that there's a lot of other stuff that used to be part of what was known as the library of the Bible that they just decided to take out for whatever reason, because there was this big committee and they decided what goes in and what goes out. We're just going to ignore that. And we're going to decide that like it was all figured out and like we got it. Like hundreds of years ago, we got it. Like we're good now. And we did the same our government. We said these guys wrote it down in 1774 or whenever like the documents were written, and we got it figured out. It's all good. Nothing's changed. And the way Joe Rogan said it on a special was, if Thomas Jefferson came back now and saw the way we were running things, he'd go, "You didn't write any new shit. I wrote that down with a feather." Like, what is happening? It's 200 years later and you haven't written anything new? Well, like, what's happening? Like, this was not about you're supposed to worship this document forever. It was about this is the best way we can figure out right now to like make things equitable for everyone. But like, it was not this is how it always stays,
From
and you
now
never
on.
stray outside of this. Like, all they were trying to do is make a place where people could be free. And this was written
Yeah.
by men who owned slaves. Like, they didn't understand the world then, like the way we do now. So I just don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand how we would
Yes.
think that, like, a guy said it is this way once because that's the way he understood the Bible. And
Right.
so
Right.
we're
That's
good.
it.
We have it. We
And
have that figured out.
to be fair, I understand, and I know Josh does as well. And I want to be fair to everyone that's watching or may view this. I don't want to alienate anyone, although I probably did with my dirty words already. But like, I get that it's problematic. I get that when you open things up like this for interpretation, which how many times have we heard that preaching? Don't open it up for interpretation. The Bible is good just like it is. But I get when we open it up for interpretation, when we say, okay, let's look deeper, let's use other resources, let's figure stuff out. I get that that can be problematic. That can bring up, especially for think of it from if I think of it from an IFB pastor's perspective, that can be really difficult. Like you could get hit with a whole lot of questions that you weren't ready for and you didn't prepare for, or you weren't prepared for, I should say. I understand that, but it's kind of like, and I don't know if this is an exact comparison. It's kind of like a celebrity that gets mad because people always want a picture with them. You got famous, man. Like you got a shitload of money. Like that's just what your life is now. If you decide you want to be a pastor and serve people and help people, well, now you have to do that. Maybe not
That's
on the level you're prepared to do, but guess what? Here you are. So you can quit or you can help people. It's up to you.
Yeah, you signed up to talk every week about the greatest
Right.
mystery that exists.
Yes.
Don't be
Yes.
mad when people are like, I don't know if you have that right. This is literally the most important thing there is. We're talking about,
Yes.
like, if we're to believe what you're saying, we're talking about our eternal souls, our
Yes.
eternal existence, and we're not supposed to have questions?
About the
Like,
great and only truly unknown. We went
yeah,
to space, I think, maybe. We've been to the ocean, to the
yeah,
bottom, I think, some parts of it. But, like, what happens after this all turns off? I don't know.
yeah.
And you're
I
supposed to
have
explain it to me. You expect me to not have questions?
I have two
I
things
don't
on
get
this.
that. I want to hear it.
One just happened today, actually. I was listening to Rob Bell's
Yeah.
podcast today, and he was talking about a study that was done back in the 60s, the way he prefaced all this, that was called the diffusion of technology or technological adoption or something like that. The diffusion of the
Okay.
adoption of technology or something like that. And it's a bell curve, right? So, like, there's always the early
Yeah.
adopters. There's, like, the early majority, the, like, late majority, and then there's, like, all the stragglers at the end that, like, don't adopt until, like, way, like, right? So, like, he was saying, so actually, let me say this, and then I'll come back to that bell curve.
Yeah.
So the moment you're talking about, like this, the reason this is problematic, the reason it's problematic to open this up and say, I don't know if this is all true.
Right.
The reason that's problematic is that once you've peeked behind the curtain and
Yeah.
seen just a little bit, you can never go back. You can't. And whether you agree with what I'm saying or what you're saying or with your pastor 100%, this is me talking now. If
Yeah.
your faith is too fragile to withstand some questions, you probably want to go ahead and ask those questions because
Yeah. Absolutely.
you may not break it right now, but it's going to break at some point.
Yeah.
So you might as well do it on purpose.
It might as
But
well be a constructed break. It might as well be
right.
something that you're in
And
somewhat
that's
in control of, as opposed to, oh shit, my life is falling apart and this is happening too.
yeah. And that's not to say you can't come back. Like there's deconstruction and
Oh,
reconstruction,
yeah.
but you should know what you're constructing. You know what I mean? Like instead of just like taking,
Yeah.
like Pete Holmes calls it, or the way he says it is, it's like getting handed a house with like a room full of furniture, and this furniture has just always been in the family forever. And you go in that room and it's just crowded and it doesn't really flow, and like some of it's really ugly and it's broken and it
Right.
doesn't work, and like you can't sit on the couch because it's like busted and springs coming out of it. So it doesn't really make sense to keep all that furniture, but part of you feels like you have to because it's like family heirlooms, right? And it
Right.
says deconstruction is like taking all of that furniture out of that room, every single piece, empty that room out completely. And then reconstruction is I'm going to put back the pieces that make sense
Mm-hmm.
and that work and that look nice and make the room flow and make the room usable and livable and good, like a good space to live in. So like I'm going to take what's useful and I'm going to reconstruct this room. But once you've peeked behind that curtain, there's a moment in philosophy. It's called the death of God. So the idea, and it's not like the literal death, like you're killing God, although like the philosopher talks about it in those little literal terms. But the idea here is that there's this death of absolute truth. There's this death of certainty. Lacan talks about it all the time. Like true freedom is, I said he talks about it all the time as if he's still alive. But like Lacan talked about it all the time in that like true freedom is freedom from certainty. Like capitalism is the promise of the next thing is going to fulfill me, and then it never does, and so it's always the next thing. And we've adopted that psychologically, and we say the next sermon is going to fulfill me, the next relationship is going to fulfill me, the next prayer with the God I worship is going to fulfill me, the next passage I read is going to fulfill me. And all we're looking for is certainty, and we're evolutionarily that's what we've been bred for. Our brains like certainty, and we're never going to find it. So true freedom, he says, is breaking from that pattern and realizing we're never going to find certainty, so we might as well just revel in the moment and know that we're never going to be certain about anything. And that's the juice. Like that's the mystery is the thing, and pursue it, great, but don't expect to ever get it, and find joy in the pursuit, not the getting. So that's the death of God moment. Once you've peeked behind that curtain, you can't go back. Like once you've seen, you can't unsee. So back to this bell curve, you've got this bell curve of like people that are early adopters, you know, like you've got the whole like gamut, right? And so Rob Bell was talking on his podcast, and he says, of course, so those of us, I would assume, Stuart, that a lot of your audience are like us in that they feel like they have a thing to do in the world, right? And so like and we've all certainly got opinions about how the world should work at the very least. So you know, like so some of us are like trying to like make things happen, and we're, you know, people like me and you are doing podcasts and other things, and like I would say to a certain extent I'm trying to help people see certain things, and I'm hoping to get people to think a certain way about things. Like I hope to change people's mind on my podcast. Like spoiler alert, I have an agenda, and I want you to think and feel certain things. Okay? Like just honestly I do. Because I see the world a certain way, and I think I'm right about some things, and I may not think the same way in a few years, but right now I think I'm right about a few things, and I would like for other people to come along. You know, like I think there are ways things should work, and I would like people to join me. Like and we all have that to an extent, right? So Rob talks about like your life's work like that bell curve, right? So like we have a really hard time having discussions about politics without like wanting to kill each other. And we have a really hard time talking about religion without wanting to kill each other. People literally kill each other over those things. Like
absolutely.
And because they're super important topics that people should be passionate about, right? And so he talks about people's life work in that you have a way that you think things should be done, and it's probably different than the way things are currently being done. So when you come up against somebody that disagrees with you, of course they disagree with you because it hasn't been done before. And so like, and maybe that's not their thing. Like maybe you're trying to get people to be passionate about something that is not their life's work. Like, which means you just need to do your life's work and make the impact that you think it should make. Right. So when I talk about the Bible, and when we talk about the Bible and the way we see it, 100% I know that there are people that are going to watch this that think I'm full of shit, and that's fine. I am most of the time. And like I said, I'm just echoing a lot of people that are smarter than I am that have written books and done podcasts and whatever. But of course you think differently than I do. You have a thing you're doing. And if you, wherever you're, I don't like to say like if you've come as far as I have, because like that implies that like I've gone further than anybody, and I haven't. Like I've done the work I've done, and you're doing the work you're doing. So if you're doing the work you're doing and you're in a different place than I am, of course you think I'm wrong, and of course I think you're wrong. But that doesn't mean we need to stop doing the work. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to let your opinion of what I think destroy all the work I've done.
Right.
But it also doesn't mean you should stop ever.
No.
When you stumble on something that you think like, oh, I think this is good stuff. Like the thing is the work, not the arriving. There is no arriving.
No.
None of us knows what happens when we die because nobody's ever come back and told us, hey, by the way, this is what happens when you die.
Right.
So to like be passionate about whatever you think happens all you want, as long as you're still doing the work. I'm so like, the minute somebody tells me they've got it figured out, I am done. I tune out. I'm so not interested. But if you tell me, hey, I agree with you, here's why, or I disagree with you is what I meant to say, here's why. Cool, let's have a discussion about it. And I was going to say I'm not interested in arguing, but my wife is probably going to see this later, and so she'll call me on that too. I'm very interested in arguing. But what I will say is I don't want to argue. I'd rather have a civil conversation about it.
Yes,
and
exactly.
So I'd love to hear why you think what you think, and maybe you'll tell me something I've never heard before. But so like when I'm talking about the Bible and like all this stuff that I'm like, of course it's this way and everything is this way, there are some things that are like pretty well documented, and so I feel pretty confident in saying that. But if you disagree with my view on the Bible, great. But are you still doing the work, and is what you think about the Bible productive? That's what I want to know.
Right. Yeah, are you trying to make some moves, or are you happy sitting with the 1611 every Sunday and that's all you use is the King James version? Not saying that you have to use something else, but like, are you really thinking about it? Are you really, as Eddie Bravo would say, looking into it, or are you just happy with status quo? Because again, that's the arrival. I arrived at the King James version. I arrived at this church. I arrived at these 66 books, and that's it. And I'm going to stay here. Well, you're a stick in the mud. That's not going to help you. And you're not going to help anyone else, by the way, in my opinion.
Yeah. So of course there's going to be resistance, because there's a possibility that you start all this and then find out you can't go back. And then that's really scary. Like living in a world without any framework with which to view it is the scariest thing. Like it feels like being out in the cold and all alone. And I understand that. Like you and I have both been there, and I would say probably still are there to some extent.
For a lot of things.
I was just telling another one of our friends, Andrew Gall. I don't think he'd mind me saying his name. I was telling him like to me the excitement now is feeling like I'm adrift in this giant sea of mystery, and like seeing like little islands along the way and being like, oh, that looks interesting. And then I land there and like, maybe it's cool for a while. And then I'm like, okay, this isn't it. I got to take off.
Right.
And then I see like a passing ship, and I'm like, maybe they have some cool stuff, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. And then like I move on. But like the juice to me now is like feeling like I'm adrift, and like, who knows, you know? So of course there's going to be resistance, and of course it's going to be scary. And if you're comfortable and you'd rather not take the risk and you don't want to be scared, then stay where you're at. I don't really judge that, because I understand that.
We've all been there, or we'll be there at some point.
But what I can't get on board with is the pastors who do this for a living. Supposedly they're doing this 40 plus hours a week, not talking about this stuff, because I have a really hard time believing at this point that they don't know it, because I don't do this for a living.
And you
know what I mean?
Yes, I know exactly what
and not that I have everything figured out, but like when you tell a story from the Bible and I know all of the rest of the context and this, like the history and the culture, and you're making a point that's completely antithetical to all of that context, you're either lazy or you're dishonest.
Or you're willfully ignorant.
And all of those options are terrible.
As a leader of people who's supposed to be
again talking about the most important thing that exists. and you're choosing to just not be honest, or you're just being
Well,
lazy. How can
you're
you be
choosing
lazy
to
about that?
ignore the right. You're choosing to ignore the research. Anyone at any university, which we've heard all the universities preach against, anyone at any university, any scientist, anyone who's really trying to study something is going to tell you you need to have multiple. Look at any Wikipedia article. You need to have multiple resources. You need to have all kinds of research going into it. And we're not saying like, hey, pastors, you're not doing enough work, do more work. No, we're just saying do the right work and figure it out for yourself, and don't be lazy about it, because it's easy to do, because it's been done for centuries, and it's easy to continue that. I did want to take just a moment here and see if there's any. John said there's the Book of Mormon too. John Bannister's talking about, instead of just the Bible or just the JWs, they got the Book of Mormon. Yes, it never says just study the Bible and nothing else. Yes. I mean, it says can't wait to go back and hear what I've missed. You missed a lot, so I can't wait for you. Not mad at you. You can't maintain control, John says. Agreed. Lazy mostly. Hey, Jake, good to see you here. Yes, lazy mostly. I would agree with you 100%, John. They've adopted someone else's filter. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like what John Bannister's saying. Just
Yeah.
adopting. But that's the IFB way is, look, Oliver B. Green or whoever, Jack Hyles, whoever started this whole thing, we've just been carbon copying that shit for years. And it's so easy to continue doing that. Why not take the easy road? I get it. And,
But
you know,
again,
it's
why, if this is, again, literally the most important thing there is.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
why would you be lazy with this? Even
yeah,
as like just a person who attends a church,
mm-hmm,
why would you just take everything at face value?
yeah,
Like it doesn't make sense to me. Like I say it all the time. I used to lay in bed when I was like a little kid. I always get emotional when I talk about this, and I like it's not
yeah,
put on. Because like I grieve for 10-year-old
yeah,
Josh
yeah,
who couldn't get a good night's rest as a 10-year-old. Like that's the best sleep you should be getting in your life.
yes, in your life.
Couldn't get a good night's rest as a 10-year-old
Yeah,
because I couldn't stop thinking, if people are literally dying and going to hell forever and ever and ever, why do we ever do anything else other than
but door to
tell
door.
them what's going
Yeah,
on?
mm-hmm,
Why does anybody have a job? Why does anybody,
right,
why am I sleeping right now?
right,
Like, if we really believe that every second somebody is dying and going to hell forever,
mhm,
why do we ever do anything else?
right.
And I
Why
could
are these
not
past?
sleep
Yeah,
because of this.
why
And
why do we have evangelists going out to lunch on Sunday for 3 hours? And why do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
what's with all the frivolities? You know, and I'm
exactly.
taking
Like
that,
what are we doing? Like having like one, like we used to call them invitation. Like what are we doing having one invitation a week? Like we would do it on Sunday
yeah,
mornings. Like Mr. Chance for another week. Too bad if you die in the meantime.
yeah,
Like
sucks to be you.
that doesn't, you don't care then. Like, you know what I mean? Like I have
Right.
no other option than to conclude that you don't
Yeah,
actually believe what you're
exactly.
telling me. Like you
Yes.
yourself don't believe it, but like this is
No,
what
you
you've been
can't.
handed, and so it's what you're handing out.
Right.
Sorry,
I
I get
will really
very
quick.
angry about that, but
No, I like
I'm
it. I
also going
like
to
the
take you with me
perspective.
because I got to change from my
Right.
AirPods, but I need my adapter. So,
I got you. I will take a moment and say hello to my brother Andrew, because yesterday I didn't say hi to him fast enough, and so he yelled at me. Hello, Andrew. Thank you for joining Not Your Mother's Podcast live episode. I appreciate it, Andrew. We should do one together at around the holiday season. We definitely should do that. Um, let's see. So we've covered a lot of ground already, just in regards to the Bible and is it literal? Is it not? Should you be researching other books and seeing what else was written around the same time, and give it some credence, and not just say, well, it's just the Bible and that's it. I'm happy just leaving it there. Like that's not okay. It needs to be more than that. You need to, if you really want to do this thing, you need to do the research and put in the time and put in work. And most especially what Josh was saying right now, addressing pastors. And we're not, I've had a lot of bad things to say about a lot of people who are in leadership in churches, but the truth is, if this is your thing and this is what you decided to devote your life to, and this is your life's work, and you're being lackadaisical, if I'm saying the word correctly, or if that's even a word, if that's how you want to be about again, like Josh said, the most important question ever, then maybe you should try doing something else, because I don't think being a pastor is for you. I don't think working in the church is for you. Um, so that's my opinion on that. There was one or two more things I wanted to say on that, and I've lost my train of thought, so we may come back to them. But I did want to, let's see, there was a couple other things I did want to bring up. This, I'm going to bring this up. Josh, do you have any more to say on that subject that we were on, or anything else? I don't want to cut you short on that before I move on to anything else.
Um, I think the only other thing, the thing that we were talking about the other day about, like those of us who have come out of like the IFB, or like people that have come out of like really strict conservative, like
Yeah.
very, very conservative Christian homes, or like, well, I mean, any religion. Um, and like this also applies to politics. I've been thinking a lot about this idea of like the ability to have conversations with people without
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But there's this tendency to like swing hard the other way.
Yeah.
And so, which is fine. If that's where you land, that's fine. Like, as long
Sure.
as, and you're the only one that knows if you've done the work to get there. But,
Yeah.
because being an atheist can be as lazy as being an
Oh,
IFB,
yeah.
sheep. Uh,
Hardcore. Yeah.
like they can both be very lazy ways of thinking, but we tend to swing so hard the other way that we completely miss this middle area of, like I told you, I read the Bible so much more now than I ever used to.
So wild.
And dude, we used to read the Bible a lot,
A
like
lot. Yeah.
every single day.
Yes. Yes.
And I read it so much more now than I ever used to, and I'm so much more interested in it now than I ever was before.
Right.
And it's not because I think it's a wholly perfect book. It's because I think there are things in it that are universal truths that
Yeah.
anybody can apply,
Yeah.
and should apply. Like there are, it's a story about the progress of humanity. Like how can that not be
Yeah.
important? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say it doesn't have to be all one or all the other. You don't have to like be all in and believe everything you hear from a pastor, and you also
Right.
don't have to be an atheist who thinks that there's nothing and like there's no point, and a Kierkegaard clone. Like you can be in
Right.
the
Right.
middle and just think, I have no idea, but I'm gonna have some fun trying to
Yeah.
learn as much as I can.
What
And
is
I'm going to learn
what
from the
does
Bible,
Frank
and I'm going to
say?
learn from Buddhism, and I'm going to learn from Hinduism, and I'm going to learn from Judaism, and I'm going to learn, maybe the
Hmm.
Mormons have like a thing or two to say. And like,
Sure.
like there's a lot of places that we can gather truth from, and what you consider truth now may not be truth 5 years from now, but if
A
it's
month from
useful for
now.
you now, great.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't have to be all one and all the other. It could be in the middle.
I agree. And it's I think finding your own middle is a beautiful thing to do, and an incredible place to not land, but kind of try to stay in or thrive within. I think that's the journey that becomes the destination, or however that's said best. But I think that's a beautiful thing, because it's something that, because I think that's what makes the middle so beautiful, because the whether it's politics, far right, far left, or whether it's religion, all God, no God, if you can find a way to get in the middle of that, you don't stay in the middle by accident.
No,
You
it's really
don't
hard to
sit
stay there.
in that middle spot, because you constantly have this side and this side pulling you each way.
And
And
we're
instead of saying, okay, I'll go with this or that, you say, no, I'm okay to stay in the middle. And here's why: because you're
Yeah,
constantly bombarded with, whether it's, you know, posts on Facebook, or news on TV, or whatever it is, you're constantly bombarded with going each way, either
yeah.
way. And for you to stay in the middle, I think, is definitely that journey that you find yourself on.
That's
Staying in the middle.
that's the hard work. We grew up being
Yes.
told that like people in the middle were like, those were the lazy ones. They just wanted to get along with everyone.
Well, God's going to spew them out of his mouth
Right,
because
the
they're
people that are
lukewarm. I think
lukewarm.
we should all be lukewarm.
Yeah. And come to find out, uh being open to truth from any source is some of the hardest work you will ever do.
And if you were, and this isn't to be unkind to our parents or the people that try to teach us in high school, junior high, and college, the good ones. But if you're raised that way, that's what makes it hard. I think if you're raised in an environment that says try to find truth anywhere, I'm not saying
I
that's
think
the
it's
only
still
thing
hard
that makes it
work.
hard. Yeah,
I I
okay.
think I think
I think
humans
it
are
makes it more
dichotomy
difficult.
machines. I think
Yeah,
humans just as a whole are, we tend to think of, we our brains like to think of things in black and white terms.
absolutes. Yeah,
And even if you were raised by like hippies that, didn't talk about absolutes at all, like
right.
your brain
You're still
wants
gonna
to
want
find
that.
absolutes. Like your brain
Right.
still wants to
That
put
makes
things in
sense.
boxes. So it may be easier if you were raised in that kind of a dynamic, but
Right.
it's the whole reason we're a
Difficult.
two-party system in America.
Hmm.
Like we
Yeah.
we like to say I'm this or that. We don't
Hmm.
like to
We love
say
labels.
I'm some of this and some of that and a little bit of this and not any of that. And like we don't like to do that because that's complicated and we don't like
Yeah.
complicated. Our lizard brains need to know
Yes.
what's safe and what's dangerous.
Leslie says she also reads the Bible with new eyes too. You can be challenged.
Good.
Yes, John Bannister. That's good. You can be challenged by truth on all sides. I think the beauty, John Bannister says, of my journey now is being able to talk to people from all walks of life, putting yourself in their shoes, seeing their perspectives, and maybe adopt new truths. And this isn't to be unkind to someone just because this is anecdotal. This is just a real quick thing that happened. But I posted something. I think this speaks to a lot of this. For me, this encapsulates a lot of this. And Andrew Hardy wants to talk about the gemstones. We may get to that. We may not. We'll
Shit.
see.
I
Yeah,
didn't
that's
watch
what I
it.
thought.
I'm so
No,
sorry.
don't. No, don't.
I'm
I
going
was
to.
trying to just, I was trying to just smooth right over that, but you stopped.
Yeah.
But one thing that I found that, again, a situation that I created, I haven't finished it, and I don't think it's even on Netflix anymore. But uh, um, who's the astrophysicist for the common man? What's Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah.
Astrophysicist may not be the right term, but he had some. The Cosmos was on Netflix, and I think that's a kind of a remake or an adding on to something that was done a long time ago.
Yeah.
I can't remember the guy that did it originally, but I was very intrigued by him, very interested, and this had to be 2 or 3 years ago because I was living in a different apartment then, and as I was watching it, I realized that a lot of the stuff that he was saying, that because he comes out and he says billions and billions of years ago, and he talks about evolution, all that stuff, and that is stuff that either I would have continued years ago, I would have continued watching that and made fun of it,
Mm-hmm.
or I would have turned it off because he said billions and billions. And now I'm not a better person. I'm not saying I'm a better person or a good person or better than anyone else at all. I would never want to say that. But I think I like to think I'm a better person than I used to be, or at least a more well-informed or a more progressive, maybe is the right word, because I was able to not just watch that and divorce myself from that thought of, oh, he said billions, I'm over it, or he's not talking about Jesus, creating everything, so I don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
I was able to just be in awe of the universe itself, and like let I was able to watch science and let science just science itself out
Mm-hmm.
and do all that fun sciencey stuff instead of, well, yeah, but he didn't talk about how God dug into the clay, and I'm not saying God did or didn't, but I'm saying I didn't get upset because he didn't talk about God pulling the rib out and putting it in and making Eve. Like, he didn't have to talk about that. I could just be in awe of the fact that, what he's saying is that dogs used to run this whole planet and now we run dogs. Like, that's nuts,
Yeah.
but it was interesting to me. And I'm not saying it's true or it isn't true, but I was able to do, and then I posted on Facebook and said, and I knew it would make some people mad, and I said I was really enjoying watching this without all the presupposition that I used to watch this kind of stuff. And then I think one of the first comments someone commented with the Robert Downey Jr. Eye roll GIF or GIF, however you say it the right way. And I was just, and I didn't have any, I just laughed at
I
him.
bet you I know who that was.
I bet you do. We're not going to say his or her name,
Yeah.
but we will talk about that afterwards.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really funny that not funny, I thought it was fun that I was able to say that and realize that in that moment, but also that it was funny that someone immediately had to, not even
Had to put you in check.
religious with it, just poke fun. And I was like, come Come on, man. Can't we just enjoy it for what it is? And just like the same with the Bible, enjoy it for what it actually is instead of what you want to make it into or misconstrue it for your own. Your own. I don't know.
We were talking the other day. I think it was you and I about how like because I still have moments where I'm like I'll think something and I'll be like, oh, I'm not allowed to think that.
Yes.
And then I'll have to tell myself, actually, you are allowed to think that. You're allowed to think anything you want. You're allowed to literally think anything you want. That's the cool thing about thinking and not talking. You can think anything you want. I can't say anything I want, but I can think anything I want. And so, like, I'm allowed to consider something like that without any of the like filters I was handed. I'm allowed to watch a perfect example is Cecilia and I went to DC not too long ago, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And the African American History Museum is now there. That's like I think 2 or 3 year old museum at this point. Not super old. And packed. It was awesome. It was packed. Like it's packed every day. Like you have to like really try to get tickets to get in.
Probably like Holocaust when it first started.
Yeah. And I walked in there like as a straight white man who has always been a straight white man ever since birth. And I saw things from an entirely different perspective than I've ever seen. And I'm learning bits of history that I never knew, and which is sad. Like this is American history.
Right.
It's just Black American history. And like
our history
we just
books,
weren't.
and I don't know about the public school because I didn't go to real school, but as far as I know, public school too, whitewashed as fuck. Like there's so much stuff, and it's not just. I'm not saying it's just missing that part of history. There's a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Whether it's, and I know what today is, whether it's what Christopher Columbus, who he actually was, or like anything like that is all. It's all. There's so much fairy tale woven into history that it's like we should be getting the real history. This is ridiculous that we're missing this at such early stages of our lives. Sorry, I interrupted you, but that's just I'm with you there.
And it's funny. It's funny that we pride ourselves on being like we record factual history, not like oral traditions.
Right.
But we do the same shit.
Yes.
We're like white people are the greatest. We invented everything and we civilized the world. But that's not actual factual history.
No.
Anyway, but going to this museum, I thought I had done a pretty good job of like ridding myself of most of my filters. And going to this museum was extremely humbling because it told me that I still have a lot of work.
You got a ways to go.
And I still have a lot of filters that I have not gotten rid of. And it was incredible. If anybody's ever in DC, make it a point to go to that museum.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But you can think anything you want to think,
that's okay.
and you're allowed. And like the difference between science and religion is science will tell you we don't know what the hell's going on. This is what we think right now because this is the information we have.
Yes.
But we don't know what the hell's going on. Like there's
a
lot of stuff we can't explain at all. And it looks like somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said science, if we traveled back in time and showed them science, they would just think it was magic. And all science is magic that we can explain. And
I like that. That's a great definition.
So science has gotten to the point where we can explain some things, or at least we think we can. But if you talk to an honest scientist, he'll say, no, we don't know what the hell's going on. My wife's cousin is literally a very high level like physicist, like theoretical physicist, like works with string theory, like practical application physics. Like he's a very smart man. And we talked about things like superpositioning, which is like the fact that there are particles that can be in two places at once or in no places ever at the same time. Like we don't understand how this stuff works, but we know that it's happening. Like you and I are particles that are vibrating at a certain frequency.
Yes.
And the only thing that's keeping you from like falling through your chair is the fact that your particles and that chair's particles are vibrating at different frequencies.
Right.
If those ever synced up, you and the chair would be one thing.
Right. No
or you would
thanks.
fall through the chair.
Right.
And we have no
That's
idea
wild.
how any of this is happening or why it's happening or what's
Yes.
making it happen. It's
But
just
we
what
know
we're
that it is.
observing.
Yeah.
So the difference between a scientist and most religious people is that scientists will tell you, we have no idea what's going on. This is what we think
Hmm.
at the moment.
Yeah.
And a religious person will tell you, this is what's
I'm
happening for
absolutely
sure,
sure.
always, no question.
Yeah. Well, we know because we were them, so
Yeah.
we're familiar.
That's 100% what
I'm
I
going to
would have
read
said.
Yeah, no, I would have. Yeah, I know exactly what's going on. John Bannister agreed. We can become legalists against legalists, reject the premise, flip shit upside down, and live in discovery. Hard work, but truly an
It
adventure.
is hard work.
Leslie told me Jif is pronounced Jif. Thank you. I have to
That's
put
how I pronounce
5,000
it. Who
pillars.
said that?
Leslie said Jif is the correct pronunciation.
Jif.
I think that's what.
The guy that created
John
the graphical interface format
Yeah,
pronounced it GIF. So
very good. Very good to know. John says he has to put 5,000 kids to bed. He'll be back in a second. It looks like he's back. Quantum physics. Nice, Josh, he said. Um, so yeah, I like breaking down that line between science and religion. And again, I think they can coexist, but you have to have some
100% they can coexist.
reality. Huh?
100% they can coexist.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to, right? Like, this is the reality we live in.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they have to coexist.
Yes. Oh,
But for one to reject the other, like for a scientist to say
yeah.
definitively there is no God, is just as dishonest as for a Christian to
Well,
say evolution is not possible, or for a
exactly.
Christian to say my God absolutely exists. Like,
And I know there's people that are. Sorry, go ahead.
well, it's just one's approaching it from observable phenomena,
Yes.
and one's approaching it from faith, but neither have all of the information, and so neither can say
Right.
the other one is absolutely incorrect or correct.
Hmm. And I don't know if this is entirely applicable here. And so I know there's people that I've talked to very smart people that are not big fans of Neil deGrasse Tyson. I get that. I'm just not a really smart person, so I'm a big fan of his because he seems really
He's a lot
smart to
smarter
me.
than I am.
Same.
So
So I like what he talked about because I don't know if it was on Rogan's podcast. Most likely it was, or someplace else in an interview. Because I'll go on tangents where I'll see someone on Rogan. I'm like, okay, I want to watch every interview they ever did,
yeah,
so I'll go down that rabbit hole. But I remember hearing him talk about, um, Christian scientists or Christian doctors, and he said that's a real thing, and I'm
yep.
glad it exists. I think that's what he said. But the defining statement that he made that I liked was, that's great, good for them. But when they step into the operating room or they step into the science lab, God, religion, all that, the ones that are really good, that all stays outside.
Yeah.
It doesn't come in with it because it's going to impair, and it's not saying anything against God or religion, but it's going to impair their decision-making process. They can't be the doctor they're supposed to be. They can't be the scientist they're supposed to be if they're allowing, other things to govern what they're thinking instead of the identifiable things they see right in front of them.
Yeah.
And that's not against God. That's not against religion. Just saying, like, you have to have a separation. If both of those things are in your mind, great, but you've got to have a separation between the two.
And I would say like there's got to be interplay between the two. Like,
Yeah, sure.
they should be like, a doctor shouldn't step into the operating room, and like if a doctor steps in the operating room and like you're still happen to be awake and not anesthetized
Right.
at this point, and he's like, man, like, God help me, I've only like I'm doing this by faith because I've never
Yeah.
God's going to guide my hand because I've never done this operation before. Like, that's not a confidence booster. Like, you want a guy that knows what he's doing, who has practiced and knows what's going to happen.
Yes.
But like, your faith shouldn't limit your science, but your science shouldn't limit your faith either. Like,
Yeah.
if it's true faith and your science says something different than your faith has been telling you all along, then it's time to examine your faith, not like reject your science. And if your faith is telling you something that doesn't line up with your science, then you have to keep examining both. Both can grow together and both can coexist. They have to, but you just have to be honest. You just have to be honest.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. Andrew really wants to talk about the righteous gemstones. I did talk about it on the live episode we did yesterday. One of them we talked about a little bit, but I don't know what to say about it, except that if you're tired of prosperity gospel, or you really want to see, if you really want to see the ugly side of these pastors that stand, whether they're prosperity gospel or not. If you want to see what the ugly side, a true, very true representation or maybe a dramatization of what these guys who stand up on Sunday and what preacher sneakers highlights and all the people that have all kinds of money but want you to still give to them, this is a great example of what goes on behind those closed doors, what those families are really like, who they really worship or what they really worship, which is their money, and how they really behave. I think Righteous Gemstones is a great representation of that.
Yeah.
And Andrew, I think you missed the part. Josh has not, and I'm not outing him here.
Watched it.
Josh has not had a chance to view it yet. He will.
I definitely
Although,
will.
I don't know if you have or not, when you were talking about Jewish tradition and Jewish culture, I thought of Big Mouth. The new season of Big Mouth is out as well. That is terrific. They do I don't know if you've seen it yet, but they do
seen the first
an episode
season.
where, okay, you need to watch the most recent season. I don't know if I think it's season 2, maybe 3, but no, it's 2, I think. But they do an episode where they talk about Jewish culture, and they talk about it's Mulaney's idea of why the Jews were wandering in the desert, and you can imagine how hilarious that is, and the parting of the Red Sea, and it's really funny, and it's the Florida episode. You'll find it. Okay. When you get to it, you'll know. But at the end, they basically let you know that this is going to be mean. You guys aren't going to like this, but Florida is a parody of the Bible. That's what the whole episode is based on. But you think about how wild Florida is, and I don't think they're real far off as far as from a comedic standpoint where they're landing on that. Anyways, that's all
I just saw that Joey Gotti joined. Hi, Joey.
Yay, Joey! I did see him as well. It's good to see you here.
One of my oldest and best friends.
Yes. The best CD burners ever.
We've been through some shit.
For much more than that, but yeah, you have.
Yeah.
You guys have been through it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to more like, if it's okay with you, like a couple of maybe anecdotal or fun things and some housekeeping. So me and Josh are both fans of a doctor, brother, high priest Joe Rogan, and we follow him as closely as we're able. And so I want to be careful with how I say this because I have not been true to this, but I've done way better than I have in the past. Joe and his buddies, Ari Shafir, Bert Kreischer, why am I forgetting my favorite one right now? Tom Segura. That's it, right?
Just the four.
Yeah, the four of them do something or have started something as of last October called Sober October. So me and Josh is doing better than me, but we're doing our best at it. I have had some days where I haven't exactly been sober, but I'm trying, which is more than I can say for me in the last 6 months to a year.
I love the phrase, haven't exactly been sober. Spoken like a true alcoholic. Oh, man. It just struck me funny.
No, it should. But we are working towards, or I am working towards, Josh is already on Sober October. So we are at least, Josh calls it Sober October, and I call it Sober-ish October. So that'll give you an idea of where we're landing. But we are both working on losing weight and cutting alcohol for this month.
Yep.
And at least the last half of it here, because we're on the 14th now.
Yeah, we're on the home stretch.
The last 2 weeks. So, but I'm bringing this up now. We talked about this before, but I'm bringing this up now to kind of keep us a little bit accountable. I've definitely seen just cutting the alcohol has really helped with, not being hungover, of course, but also with losing weight.
Yeah. So tell me what that experience is like, because I have my own perspective about cutting out the alcohol for the month.
Yeah.
But how have you seen improvement? What's different for you with much less alcohol?
Yeah. So to be fair, and I don't want to, hey, Stacy, thanks for joining us. I don't want to overshare here, but to be fair, like if you're consistently consuming alcohol, like for me, it helps me calm down, it helps me go to sleep. I kind of use it. And I think people, therapists mostly would call that a coping mechanism or what have you, or self-medicating, that's the term.
Yeah.
So using it to kind of help me calm down. I have a lot of work every day, and when I get to the end of the day, it's not all done, and it usually bleeds into the next day. That's just how my life is now. But because of that, I tend to, stress about it. So it helps me not stress about it. It makes my evening easier. But the next day, it's very difficult. I mean, even that evening too. But since I'm falling asleep, it doesn't matter. The next day, it's really difficult on my body. Like, I mean, you can drink as much water as you want, but if you're drinking what I'm drinking, which is generally Tennessee honey, you're gonna be the sugar, the dehydration, the alcohol itself. You're gonna be hungover. So if you're drinking it consistently enough, then you don't really think you're hungover, and you're I'm fine. But then when you stop for a few days, you realize, I'm just consistently hungover, and so that is
As
not,
Archer would say, that it's the cumulative hangover.
yes, that
Yeah.
is exactly accurate. So I would say that's the first thing you notice is um,
Do you just so you just like feel better, like clearer?
you just feel better. Yeah, you're clearer, you're better, you feel more cognizant of everything. Leslie, thank you. I don't want to overshare here. I will private message you about that, but that is something that I'm researching, so I appreciate you bringing that up.
I'm intensely interested in that too. So we should talk more about that.
I'll hit you up about that 100%. One thing I will say, if for anyone who's listening and is like, man, like I feel you, like I'm struggling with that as well, or just you're looking for alternatives to put yourself to sleep. One thing that really works, and I know that if you have too much melatonin, you'll develop melatonin deficiency. I'm aware of that, but there is a drink called Some Sleep, not SOME, it's SOM. Dan Henderson actually recommended it to me. They sponsored him, and SOM Sleep. You can find it at Walmart or on their website. I think if you use the code HBOMB, you get 15 or 25% off. HBOMB. They're not sponsoring this podcast. I'm just throwing it out there because it helped. That stuff will knock you out. It'll knock you out good. Really good. So I would recommend, if you're looking for someone to help you put you to sleep and you want to switch from alcohol, that stuff will knock you out. But anyways, all that to say, I'm learning slowly that the trade-off is worth it. The more I work through my own stress in the evening about worried about finishing this work or falling asleep or whatever, what have you, working through that myself brings more power to me. And then again, the next day, not dealing with being hungover or having stomach issues or anything like that, just because of the amount of alcohol intake that I'm dealing with. So that's a big one. Is how you feel the next day. Definitely feel a lot better. And I can tell you, just because it was a consistent thing, I can tell you that trying to sober up with it. Can you hear me okay? I'm getting not feedback, but a bunch of extra ambient sound.
I'm gonna have to jump out and jump back in because for some reason I'm getting like your like a few seconds ago audio and your current audio again. So I'll just jump out and jump back in.
Do your thing. We'll see you in a second. I'll continue to talk about alcoholism. It's a great subject. But yeah, that's something that really has helped. Just again, working through it yourself instead of relying on calm down. And I'm not quite there yet. I'm working towards it. But I like that Josh brought that up and had a further question on that. That's something that me and him are. I mean, I'm more intensively working towards because he's been pretty dry for a while, which is great. Good for him. I don't know. I'm volunteering that information for him, whether he wants me to or not. But he's been working on that a lot longer than I have. Where'd you go, Josh? I'm trying to Josh. Josh sent me a request, but I'm going to add him. All right. Anyways, so yeah, to speak to that, it's just the more you can get away from it. If you've been, getting using alcohol consistently, Josh is back. The more you can get away from it, the better days you're going to have. And honestly, I haven't noticed like, oh my God, like everything fits better immediately. But I have definitely noticed a difference in just stepping on the scale. Like it definitely makes a difference. So my two, to be brutally honest here, the two things that I was working with a lot, or dealing with a lot, was just because I a lot of my work I can sit down and do it. I've got to get back to physical exercise. That's also part of the Sober October challenge that Joe and the crew does. So that's something I have to work on as well. But that, as well as if you're sitting all day and you don't really want to make food, DoorDash and Grubhub seem like your best friends. And they're really not, because I'm not saying there's not healthy options, but once you get started, and this isn't an excuse, but man, the sugar and carbs, our body, you become addicted to it so fast. And so like last night, I managed to not DoorDash and I managed to not drink, which is a task for me. but like I wanted a hamburger so bad last night, so bad for you. And I know, like, I don't know how many of you follow me or how long you've known me, but like, I did a lot of work and lost a lot of weight, and I've gained it back. And so, John Warden feels my pain. I see that. So, you know, I don't think I know. The biggest thing is momentum, and I learned that the first time I lost the weight. Once you set yourself a goal and you hit it, and you realize I can keep hitting more goals as far as whether it's pounds or fitting into clothes, that's a huge thing. But then it's your mind. It is so much in your mind, and so you know that yesterday having a bunch of greens, which I don't like, just making smoothies packed full of, you know, I'll have some fruits, but I have tons of spinach in there. Don't really like it, but I know it's good for me. My gut feels incredibly better, and you know, I don't know. I'm ranting now, but that's my goal. Obviously, is to lose some weight. I've put on a lot more than I wish I had. My goal is hopefully within the next month to get down to 200 pounds. I never thought I'd hear myself say that again, but that's my goal in the next month or so. I'm just throwing that out there to keep myself accountable, and then just being consistent with not eating as poorly as I have been, which is pretty bad. It's been fast food every day, at least every night, late, eating fast food late, working on that, working on the alcohol consumption, and working on getting back to physical exercise has not been an easy path, but I know I can do it. I've done it before. So anyways, that's my sober October kind of thing. Love you too, John. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, man. Oh, yeah, John, I miss you. Love you. Um, yeah, man, I think you've done a lot more work on the fitness side of things than I have.
A long time
At
ago,
least,
not
yeah,
recently.
I'm sure you have. Well, you still go though. Like I still see you putting in the work
I'm
here and there.
trying.
And that's definitely more than I'm doing. I got a bike
There you
recently,
go.
which I've been like trying to ride, and I haven't been super consistent, but I just got a trainer, an indoor trainer, which basically
Yeah,
lets you ride your bike
yeah,
inside while you're watching
perfect.
movies. So, you know, I'm gonna
Yeah,
struggle
yeah, see,
to like I'm
that's
sacrificing
awesome.
things.
God
Um,
bless.
but yeah, man, I so my on my
Mm-hmm.
end for sober October, I haven't had a drink yet in
Oh,
October,
mm-hmm.
and I like a good
Yep.
beer. Um, Whiskey is usually my drink of
Yeah, same.
choice, and I haven't had hard liquor in a while. Like company happy hour here and
Sure.
there, like I'll have an old fashioned, but um, I used to have at least two shots every podcast I'd
Yeah.
record. I used to like most nights I would sit down. I talked about this with my therapist.
Good.
Most nights I would sit down with like 2, 3 shots of whiskey and like some video games or whatever. That was like 4 or 5 nights a week at one point, and like, and then we moved in
Mm-hmm.
February, and like I was just like, it's a whole new
Right.
lifestyle. Like I was adjusting to everything, and so I just found myself somehow not drinking as much, which wasn't on purpose. It just like wasn't built into my
Right.
schedule anymore. And then I started to find. I just saw John's
Scotch.
Scotch,
Bouncing
Scotch,
my
Scotch,
back.
Scotch is Scotch. Um,
Classic Bronzo.
Scotch is good. But it just I and then I started to notice I felt better and more
Yeah.
engaged in interviews for my
Yeah.
podcast if I wasn't drinking. So I stopped
Yep.
doing that. Um, because it was like I was doing it before podcasts as like to
Calm down.
like suppress the
Yeah.
anxiety a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, and then I was realizing that like that anxiety is what was keeping me kind of sharp
Circular.
like in
Yeah.
interviews, and I have ADHD, so it was helping to like curb some of that too. And so, but I'm better on my medication off of the
Yeah.
whiskey, at least in
I feel
interviews.
you.
Um, so, but since we started sober October, like, so I haven't been drinking that much
Right.
recently, but since we started sober
You're
October,
wanting.
there have been so many
Yeah.
times where I'm like, oh, I just want like I just want some whiskey,
Yeah.
or I just want like a
Yeah.
beer or something. Like I've been craving it a lot, which is surprising. And it's just the thing of
It's a
like, you can't have
yeah.
it,
It's a
so I
mind
want
game
it.
for sure.
Yeah. So, and then on like the weight loss side,
Yeah.
because that's something I need to do
Yeah.
too. I went, I don't talk about this
Yeah.
much, but I went vegetarian,
Oh, cool.
It's been a long
Really?
time. I've been doing it for a
That's
while.
awesome, dude. Good for you.
Yeah. Since before we moved, I think. I
Oh,
think I
wow.
think it's been most of this year, if not all of this
Well,
year.
props to you. Not trying to be a
And I
dick
say
here. Props to you for going vegetarian and not having to tell everyone about it. I couldn't resist that.
it
Too
comes up
easy.
like because I'll it comes
I
up
mean,
because I'll go out to eat with people and they're like, what are you doing? And so like I don't want to be rude
yeah,
and be like, don't worry
yeah,
about it, you know. So like I'll tell them, but like it's not because of animal cruelty. Like I
right.
really don't care that much. Like I
Yeah,
care. Like
I
factory
get it.
farming is
I know what you
terrible,
meant.
and like it's not like there's much better ways to do it.
Yes.
I don't have a problem with
Yeah,
hunting. Like that's a much more humane death than those animals are going to get otherwise.
absolutely.
So I don't have a problem with any of that, but it's purely environmental.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to preach about, you know, the
No.
environment, but
Yeah.
you should take fucking care
Yes.
of your environment, because it's the only one you have, and then you're going to give it to your
Right.
kids, and you know why would you give your
We're
kids a
not gonna
shitty
fuck
environment?
them over. That.
So it's just for that.
Yeah, but it's
But
also healthier.
being vegetarian, well, see, that's the thing. Like being a vegetarian, I've gained weight
Really?
since I
Okay.
went vegetarian. Yeah, and it's because it's a lot easier to eat way more carbs than if you're
Oh,
like if meat's part of your
yeah.
diet. Because like you still have to get
Yeah.
full, and like it's crazy, but like vegetables are not that accessible.
No.
Like, and they're kind of
Well,
expensive.
and like
And
if you're not eating like if you're eating like it's not good, but like your meats, all that processed stuff, like that stuff lasts forever. Your
yeah,
vegetables, your bananas, I have some there, they're done. Like I can't eat them.
exactly. And like and you still need like
Yeah,
protein and like other
yeah,
stuff. So like you have to like supplement like
mhm,
vegetables. So like but it's really easy to eat a lot more carbs than you would
yeah,
otherwise. Like you can get a cheese pizza and be set, you know what I
right,
mean? Or like an black olive pizza or
right.
something like that, which is my personal favorite.
Sounds
So
delicious.
I've gained weight since I became
Okay,
vegetarian, and so I'm like I was when we started sober October, I was the heaviest I've ever
nice.
been. You know what? I'll just tell people I was 250. I'm 6 foot and I was
Yep.
250, which is not good. That's way overweight. So and like it was to the point where like my loose clothes were starting to get
I've
tight,
gotten to the point where this
and
is
I was
all
like,
new.
I hate
This and
this.
this, these are new clothes because like I'm not the
Yeah,
ones that I have tons of. Medium's not a size for me
I
anymore.
oh, me
Yeah,
either. Like I'm lucky if I can get into a large
right.
now.
Same.
A lot of my new shirts are like extra larges, which I'm not proud of, but it's part of the reason we're
Yeah.
doing this. So since we started Sober October, I've been very conscious about what I'm eating. And I've dropped 15 pounds
What? I
so
didn't know
far
that.
since the first of the
That's
month.
awesome, dude.
Um, I think it's mostly water weight because I'm not a ton smaller. Like my belly's a little smaller, but that's about it.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but it feels
Yeah.
good, and like so
It's an
like you were saying,
accomplishment
like
though.
that
That's
momentum, like
tangible. You can hang on to.
yeah. So now that I've got that momentum going, I want to keep that going.
Yes.
Which is why I have like the bike and the indoor trainer
Mhm.
and everything. So I'm gonna try and like keep it
Hell yeah.
going. But because I don't want to be 250 again.
I don't want to be.
And I hate wearing extra
I
large
hate that.
shirts. So
Well, for me, it's also about mobility too. Like, and I've got I've got a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
6-year-old kid. The things that she wants to do, that wants me to carry her and all that stuff. Like I do my best, but there are times where I'm just holding her at bedtime, just rocking her to sleep for a few minutes, singing the song, and I'm getting
Yeah,
winded. I'm like, this isn't okay. Like I've got to, something's got to
yeah,
change, and it's just things get rooted in your brain that getting some having another shot or two, getting that Five Guys burger, getting that double quarter pounder with cheese, whatever it is. Like your brain is telling you like you need this, and then I go 2 or 3 nights where last night like I had some potato chips. I'm not gonna lie, but before that, all I'd had that day was, and I'm not bragging. I'm really not. I'm just saying like this helps me. Saying it helps me understand that I can do it. Where I would have normally had a Five Guys burger and fries, or whatever I would have ordered from DoorDash at 11 o'clock or whatever. I think at like 7 or 8 o'clock, I had a spinach and almond milk and what are those little beads that get stuck in everything? I can't think of one thing. I have them right there.
oh
Chia seeds and I can't remember what else, but like I had a very healthy smoothie for supper. I didn't like it. It
yeah.
didn't taste good, but I felt good when I went to bed, and I felt good the next morning.
See, that's the difference. Like, because being vegetarian's
Yeah,
fine. Like, and I say vegetarian, like I like if I go on
yeah,
vacation or like like we were just in Chicago recently,
What are
and
you
I
gonna
ate
do?
meat
Yeah.
like while we were there on the weekend. So like I'm not, because it's not like I'm not gonna be militant about
Yeah.
it. So like I've been calling myself a flexitarian, which
I like
I've
that.
found
I
out
like that.
since is like that's like a
Yeah.
term, but um but like you feel so, but being vegetarian for me is not that bad. Like I still get to eat things I
Yeah.
like. I miss meat, but I don't like, it's not like I don't miss it that
Right.
much, you know what I mean? Um and I like, also I didn't want to sound earlier like I was preaching to people to be
Yeah.
vegetarian.
No.
I'm just doing it for
No. Yeah.
environmental reasons. All I meant was I hope you're also doing something for the environment,
Yes.
because we all need everybody to
Yeah.
do something. But so do whatever you feel you need to do. But it's I feel when I eat
Mm-hmm.
healthy, not vegetarian because like there's still tons of
Sure.
carbs, but when I actually eat healthy, so like what I've been doing is like I'll do like a protein shake instead of a
Yep.
meal, every now and then, because I still need
Mm-hmm.
protein, and I'm not getting protein from all the things I was getting protein
Right.
for, because I'm
You're not
not eating as many carbs.
right.
So so I'm not getting like a ton of protein from cheese and like other things that I was getting it from before. So now I'm doing like protein shake instead of a meal. And I'm always a little bit hungry. Like I've been a little bit hungry since the first of this
Oh
month,
no.
at all
Yeah.
times. But you feel like I was at the point where I was out of breath tying my shoes.
Yeah.
So I don't want
No.
that. So like I just feel better, and maybe it's just the knowledge that I'm like doing
You're
something
changing.
to like
You're
help
taking.
make my body
You're
better.
taking control.
But I was telling Cecilia, like the crazy thing is, after we get
Yeah.
off the podcast, I'll tell you what I'm
Yeah.
doing, to like watch what I'm
Okay.
eating, because I don't want to like, I don't think it's necessarily a healthy thing. It's definitely a crash diet, and I don't want to put it out there for other people like to be like, I'm going to
I
try
feel
that,
it.
because don't do it.
Well, I'm the guy that put out the
Um,
potato diet like it was this great idea, and it is not. I've done it.
but I've seen other people
It's
do
not
that.
good for you, but I've done it. And it really works. I'm just not in a place where I think I can physically handle it right
Um,
now.
yeah, well, that's the other thing. Like sustainability is huge. Like I'm not going to do what I'm doing for more than
Right.
a month. Like I'm not going to
Yeah.
do this. But anyway, the like I was telling Cecilia, because she was like, aren't you like just unhappy? Like, isn't there just a part of you that's unhappy because like there's a lot of comfort in eating what you want
Oh
to
my
eat.
God. Yes.
You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
And like we're like cultures around the world, like there's community and
Mm-hmm.
like comfort in eating, like specific
And
foods.
stress. I put
And
stress eating in there too, because that's been a big
oh
thing for
yeah,
me. That's been a staple for
yeah.
many years.
Well, and there's like chemical reactions that
Yes.
happen like within your
Yes.
body, that like when you eat
Cheese.
certain things you literally feel
Yes.
better. Yeah, cheese is one of
Stress.
them for me too.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, don't you like feel a little bit sad all the
Right.
time that like you're not, now that you're not eating a lot of this stuff? And like I told her honestly, there's something about the taking control, and a psychologist would probably have a lot to say
Oh,
about
sure.
this, because like we grew up in an environment where we controlled very little.
Yes.
So for me, there's something that I thoroughly enjoy. Like I was looking forward to doing Sober October, like when we talked
Mm-hmm.
about possibly doing it, I was really looking forward to it, because there's something I really enjoy about taking control of like, and knowing that like I can have the discipline to like do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so I know that I can have the discipline to do what I'm doing for a month.
Right.
I'm not going to do it for more than a
Right.
month, but like I told myself I'm going to do this for a month, and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And there's something really satisfying about saying like, I'm not going to eat that anymore, and then sticking to it. And nobody's making you,
No,
like
you're making
nobody's like
yourself.
making me do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But like I'll know, and there's something really satisfying about like controlling that, and like and knowing that like I can do this, I can do
Right.
anything for a month. Like so, yeah. And then there's like the physical side of it. Like I literally just got like, I have 2 more pieces arriving for the
Oh,
trainer
nice.
tomorrow. So I'm going to set that up, and then I'm going to be going hard on the trainer
Yes.
for the rest of the month. So I'm going to hopefully, get a little bit of defined muscle mass,
Yeah.
as well as like slimming down a little bit, and then keep the momentum
Yes.
going. I'm going to try and my goal weight is 220.
Dude, you're on.
and I don't know if I'll hit that this month, but my goal weight's 220. Yeah, but it's always like the last 10 pounds that are hardest
those are the
to lose.
Yeah, I feel you.
So 220 is where I want to get to, and like,
There she goes.
and then hopefully stay there. So anyway, there's my accountability.
I love it.
I want to get to 220.
I love it. Well, I guess
dude, we should take pics of the scale at the end of the month, and then we can post them, like good or bad.
Yeah, especially
we can show people where we made it.
But I haven't been as consistent as Josh has, or has gotten as much exercise. But yeah, I don't know if I can do 200 by the end of the month. I know who is Bannister in here still? I think we lost John Bannister. Let me see. Because John Bannister has a saying that I really like. No, we don't have John anymore. He said something that I think really speaks to this whole idea. And I think he said it. Yeah, we recorded it. I haven't posted it yet. But instead of saying it's hard, because there's some finality to it's hard. Well, it's hard, and that's it.
Dude, congrats to John. Sorry, I just interrupted you, but I just realized we're talking about John Bannister. Did he run his marathon already?
I don't think yet, but like that guy's running every day.
He's training for one.
He's killing it.
Dude, props to John if you're in here, or if you see this later. John's been a huge inspiration for me because like dude's killing it, and he's lost a ton of weight, and he's done it the healthy way, not the crash diet way.
He's busy. He's got hella kids, and he's busy with work, busy with
church, dude's got way more responsibilities than I have,
but he's still killing it. But he said something a while ago. He said he taught me something, and every time I'm around John, I'm always gleaning from him. And he said instead of saying it's hard, because again there's finality in that statement of it's hard, like, and that's it, like it's hard, so I'm not going to do it. He said instead of saying it's hard, when you say it's not easy, that brings more empowerment to you. Like, it's not easy, because there's a but right on at the end of that. If it's hard, and there's no but, it's hard, but no, it's just hard. It's not easy, but yeah. So that's something I learned from John that's been really fun.
And like, dude, that phrasing, that reframing is like, when you say something's hard, like you're already like you're putting up obstacles. When you say something's not easy, you're still like you're acknowledging that there's obstacles, but like getting up at 6 a.m. to go to work is not easy. No, but you do it. Like, we do things that aren't easy all the time. Like, people that have like very specialized jobs, their job is not easy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, what you do for a living, you specifically, what you do for a living is not easy. Like, you work a lot, and it's like difficult work, and you're good at it, but that's not easy. But you do it. That's really good. Right on.
I
John.
love that. I wanted to read Leslie dropped us a comment. She said, I feel you guys 100%. I also unknowingly have been participating in Sober October. Yay, we got another one. I had a really nasty hangover
unknowingly.
I had a really nasty hangover 3 weeks ago for the first time in over 2 years. I feel like that was the kick in the pants I needed to be completely dry. Good for you, Leslie. That's rad. So happy for you.
Right on.
So anyways, that is our...
You know what I thought was interesting? When Joe and like the guys were talking about it, Bert said his therapist told him not to stop drinking. Did you catch that?
I didn't. Is that the recent one? I haven't watched the most recent Sober.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it.
Okay.
Yeah, Warden told me to watch it too.
Yeah, so you got a lot to catch up on.
Yeah.
Because Ari, I don't know how I feel about Ari these days, but
he said, watch the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Ari's gonna scare you.
Yeah, a lot. But Bert, they were talking, because like originally this started because Bert needed to stop drinking. Like, Bert had a problem, and like Bert would say, like, they're very open about it. Bert would say, like, yes, I had a problem.
I think you're referring
and I guess you can't say you had a problem.
You're referring to Bert
problem.
Chrysler. I don't know who Bert is, but
Bert Chrysler. Yeah.
No, what does Tom say? Brent Crystals. Yeah, that's who it is.
Yeah, Brent Crystals. Bernie.
There's
Chrysler.
so many of them. Bert is fat.
So we'll just call him the machine. We just call him the machine.
They're supposed to be developing that for film. Did you know that?
Well, yeah, he was talking about that on the podcast.
Okay, cool.
Like, somebody's interested. He had a meeting. He took a meeting for
That'd
it
be
or something.
fucking great.
Which 100% I'm in. Dude, Seth Rogen playing Bert Kreischer in a movie called The Machine. I'm in.
I don't see how it gets any better than that.
But so they were talking about how they started this because Bert had a drinking problem, or has a drinking problem, I guess. And but then Bert on this most recent episode said that his therapist told him not to stop drinking. He told him to moderate it, but not to stop, because like stopping drinking would cause more problems than it would alleviate, which I thought was interesting. And I know that's a thing, because when my therapist and I talked about drinking, he said, like, he was like, that was one of the first questions he asked me, like, how often do you drink? How much do you drink? And so I told him, like, if I'm going to get drunk, it takes a lot just because of my genetics, but like, I don't really drink that often anymore. And he was like, okay. But he said the reason he asks is, like, in the future, like, if depending on where therapy goes, he may recommend or not recommend stopping drinking, because like it may be semi-positive for certain people, and like stopping may be a worse thing than continuing in moderation. So all that to say, I'm so happy for Leslie if that's the path that she needs to go down, and that's, you know, something she feels she needs to do. I don't judge anybody for being sober, and I don't judge anybody for not being sober. I just like the exercise and discipline that the month of October is giving us.
I like it.
So
I'm with you. Well, I think we did good for, I'm not saying we're done this minute, but I think we did good for not having any notes. There's a lot of ranting.
Yeah, I would say
a lot of good information exchanged. So I'm grateful to you, Josh, for taking the time to hop on and do this. Do you have any? Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm grateful that you had me on.
Of course, dude.
This is my obsession. So
good.
If anybody gives me a chance to talk about this, I'm gonna hop on and talk.
I fucking love it.
So I appreciate it.
Good. Well, of course. And I don't want to. I've done this the last couple of times I've had lives, but I don't want to cut you off from anything. Did we miss anything? You know, is there anything else you wanted to say? What you know? I'm not putting you on the spot. If that's it, cool. But I don't want us to miss anything that you'd want to say.
I think the only other thing I would say is that I like. If somebody listens to this whole thing, they'll hear me say, you shouldn't talk in absolutes. And then they'll hear me talk in absolutes about things. I said at the very beginning, I'm full of shit. And it's true, I am, because I'm a human. So just, and that's fine. Like, I can be full of shit, but so two things I'll say. If anybody, I'm super happy.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all good. I don't know if the broadcast will keep that part or lose it. So can you say what you said? You paused for a moment and then we lost you. They may have heard it, but I want to make sure that we catch all of that.
Yeah, I just said, so also, like, two things come to mind. One is, if you disagree with anything I said, send me a message. I'm not hard to find. And I would love to talk more about this, because it's all I ever want to talk about. Dude, the earth is a rock hurtling through a vacuum in a infinite empty space, and we all live on it? around a burning deadly orb, and we're not colliding with all of the other balls that are also hurtling through space at thousands and hundreds of thousands of miles an hour. Dude. And we all just accept it, and like, we're worried about what, like, coffee we're gonna get in the morning. Like, I don't understand how all of us are not talking about this always. So if you disagree with anything I said, send me a message and let's talk more, and we'll be respectful and civil, and it'll be great. As a matter of fact, I would say, if you disagree with me about this stuff and you want to talk more, I will buy you a copy of Rob Bell's book.
Ooh, okay.
And say, I will. I'll buy you a copy of Rob Bell's book and I'll send it to you. So if you're interested in that, hit me up, because I'll do that. But the other thing I'll say is, I don't have everything figured out, but I'm thrilled about the process of figuring things out. And I really hope, wherever people land, like, about religion or politics or anything, I just really hope that we can learn. I've been obsessed with this idea of, like, having hard conversations and talking about the hard things. And we're talking about Joe Rogan. Like, one of the things I like about Joe Rogan, I do not like some of the people that he has
For
on his
sure.
podcast. And I really wish that some of the people he gives a platform to, that he wouldn't give
Yeah.
a platform to. That's just me being completely honest. And that may contradict everything I'm saying. I'm a human and it's all part of
Right.
it. But like, he recently had Roseanne Barr
Yeah.
on his podcast. I think that's one of his most recent
Mhm.
episodes. She's a raving lunatic. She's clearly mentally unstable. And like, it sounds like I'm being
not
unkind,
to make
but
an excuse
I
for
don't
Joe,
mean,
but I think the reason is because she has or been or at some point was a comic, and Joe has that special place for comics.
yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a comic, and they have a relationship.
Yeah.
They know each other anyway. And Joe's really good. So my
Yes.
point is, like, I don't like Roseanne. I would prefer he not give her a platform on the biggest podcast that
Yes.
exists. But he's really good at humanizing people that consistently get dehumanized. He had Alex Jones
Yep.
on, who is one of the most
Nuts.
incendiary, like, controversial figures ever.
Nuts. Well, I
But
think
like,
all the
and
mashups of him that account did, they were hilarious.
yeah,
And you didn't even have to mash him up to hear him say, "I'm a little fucking crazy." Like, okay.
yeah, he'll just say it.
Yeah.
But like, who's the lecturer that he just had on too? The guy that, like, make your bed in the morning.
Jordan.
I can't remember his name. The Canadian.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jordan Peters.
Peterson. Peters. I don't know.
Peterson. Yeah. Peterson. And like, he's a super controversial
Yes.
figure and consistently gets dehumanized. Ben Shapiro gets dehumanized all the time. Like, he has these people on.
Shapiro, I couldn't remember, but yeah, that's who else.
Nugent. Congressman Crenshaw was just, Ted Nugent. Like, all these people that, like, get vilified, and whether or not you think it's for good reason,
Right.
he has a really good way of humanizing these people and helping you understand they're people.
Yeah.
And they have experiences that led them to the way they are, just like you have experiences that led you to the way you are. And he clearly disagrees with some of these people, but he disagrees so civilly that, like, you almost don't even know. But he's having important discussions about really sensitive topics, and he does it really well. And I hope that somehow we can open up a dialogue, a true dialogue, and share ideas and discuss how we think the world should work without having to beat each other's throats.
Yes, I agree.
So if you believe the Bible's perfect, great. I don't, but let's hashtag coexist, and let's trade ideas about how we think the world should work. And we're not going to agree, but I think at the core we would both agree that we have people's best interests at heart, and so let's start there.
I love that.
That was a lot of rambling.
No, it was good. It was all good stuff, though. The two things I would say on that, I'm trying to remember exactly how this plays out because I don't remember this precisely, but I do remember and I don't know if these are one and the same interview or two different ones, but there's an interview of Robert Downey Jr., and I'm not saying he's only ever walked out of one interview, but there's an interview that he walked out of, and I think it is a part of that interview or a different interview where that was brought up, and someone was trying to kind of, because, like, these, being in the public eye, and I already talked about being a movie star and complaining about it, but being in the public eye, whether you're in film, whether you're in sports, whether you're a public speaker, not everything, but a lot of the stuff you say goes on record. And if you've been in the public eye long enough, stuff that you said 10, 15, 20 years ago is on record. And I'm trying to think who I saw today. Pharrell had a statement about, because I think he's in GQ this month or something, but he had a statement about blurred lines in his songs. And he said, look, there's songs I look back on. And I don't know if he said ashamed, but he said, I would never perform those now. Like, I'm a different person. And Robert Downey Jr., in an interview, someone was trying to call him out for something he had said 10 or 15 years ago. I don't know if it was before or after jail time, whatever it was. And he said, and he looked at him kind of funny. He said something like, wasn't that like 10 years ago? And they said, yeah, but you still said it. And he was like,
I know that interview.
Yeah, but he said, I think it's the walkout interview. And I think the gist of what he said after that was something to the effect of, isn't it cool that was my opinion then, and now my opinion has changed? Yeah. And that's the cool thing about opinions, where we get to change them and we get to decide what we want to think. And I don't know at one point, but I think at some point in that interview, he dropped the mic and walked out. But that is something that I've tried to cling to, and something that I feel like is resonating from what you're saying, and that is, look, I might say one thing or another thing, and you might not be able to find the medium there, or feel that I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, and that's because I'm a human, and my opinions sometimes.
Because I am.
Well, there you go.
Because humans do that.
Sometimes my opinions will conflict or not entirely make sense. They might make sense in here, and then when they come out here, they don't make as much sense to you as they do to me. But those are my opinions, and I get to have them. I don't. But the thing is, Josh, you're not pushing them down anyone's throat. You're not saying you have to believe this. You're not saying this is how it has to be.
I try not to.
Well, you haven't today.
I'm not always successful at that either.
But anyways, that was
the
what I wanted.
The mantra that helps me. On that note, the mantra that helps me all the time, I say this to myself all the time, and that is, it's all part of it.
Yes.
And I know that can sound like really flaky, but what I mean by that to myself anyway is like being angry for no good reason, being mad that you got cut off in traffic, contradicting yourself, fluctuating between several different opinions. And all the good stuff like joy and happiness and giving and love and all of it. Like, it's all part of it. It's all part of the human experience. And what else are we going to be if not fully human? So that doesn't mean we stop working on ourselves, but that also means we give ourselves a little space and each other a little space to be fully human, because that's all we are. So when I catch myself being a little too dogmatic or a little too pushy or a little too like fundamental, because like fundamentalism doesn't just exist in Christianity.
Not just the IFB.
I like, when I catch myself, I feel bad about it, and I'm like, I kick myself a bit, but then like the thing I repeat to myself all the time is it's all part of it. I'm a human. This is what humans do. That. And then I kind of have this moment of like, oh, look at me doing the human thing, like, you know, which is the whole reason I start off every podcast saying people of Earth.
Yes.
And it's the whole reason I say good humans. Like there was a lot of other directions I thought about taking it, but like at our core, we're human. And so let's be fully human and just figure out how to do that well together, because we're going to have to do it together one way or another.
And you scared me there for a minute, because I thought you were going to steal my thunder, because I wanted to do something now that you always do on your podcast. I think you already know what's coming. But Josh always ends his podcast with 2 questions. I'm not going to ask you the second one, just the first one. Josh always asks his guests 2 questions. And the first one, and that I really like, and maybe I'm getting this backwards, I don't know. But the first one that he always asks, and I'm stealing this from you, Josh. I'm not going to do it for every episode, but this is your episode.
It's okay.
What does it mean to you? What does that look like to you to be a good human?
So my answer to this question has changed several times over the course of doing this podcast. And the most recent time I answered this question, I was on Christopher Swan's live Instagram show not too long ago, like when we started our new season. Okay. And I think my answer is the same as the answer I gave then, which is I think all of us are good humans by default. So what I think it is to be a good human is to be, again, fully human. I think we end up hurting each other or doing quote unquote bad. Like it's, I don't know, like however you define good and bad. Yeah. Like we know it when we see it, you know what I mean? Like that sounds flaky too, but it's true. It's just true. And I think we are all good by default, and the bad happens when we take our hands off the wheel, when we stop paying attention, and when we're not intentional about living out our full humanity. You can't tell me you're being fully human and at the same time, you know, massacre an entire race of people. Right. And you can't tell me that you're being fully human and deny an entire gender any basic human rights. You can't tell me that you're fully human and at the same time own another human being as if they were property. Right. Like those things happen when we take our hands off the wheel and stop being intentional about living out our full humanity. So I think being a good human is just being, but being intentional about being fully human, and then letting other people also be fully human with all of the joy and bad and weirdness and mixed up, craziness and everything else that goes with it. But at least we're all fully being
Right.
human.
Well, cool guy. I like that. Not I realize as you're saying, the wheels are turning, and I realize I've been saying I like that a lot, so I need to speak to that for a moment. Cool guy. I like that. If you don't know what we're talking about, just go to Garth Brooks' Instagram and be amazed.
Oh my God. Whew.
It's true.
Dude, that's still one of my favorite things. The only reason I follow Garth Brooks on
I don't follow him
Instagram
for
is
any
because
other
of
reason.
that.
There's no other reason to follow
Oh my God.
him.
It's so
Yeah,
good.
I'll be brief.
That and the occasional throwback to "And the Thunder Rolled,"
Yes.
which is it's a classic.
It is,
So.
but just to be brief with that, there's a everyone's got to know. I don't think Garth Brooks is Cher or Elvis, but you got to know who Garth Brooks is. There's just no way you don't. Country star, and there's a comedian that we've spoken of already tonight named Tom Segura, who has just trolled him super hard to the point that all of Tom Segura's fans, Garth Brooks, you can't even get someone. There's Amazon Music, I think, is doing an ad, or no, Apple, some streaming service is doing.
I think it's Amazon Music.
They're doing an ad with Garth Brooks, and even the ad is getting trolled. And it started off with a joke about Garth being a psychopath because he kind of acts like one. And Tom Segura's fans just went up, and literally you can go 300 comments deep on one of Garth Brooks' Instagram posts and find 4 comments that are fans, and the rest are just talking about where the bodies are buried. We need closure. You're a psychopath. I'm home here now. All kinds of nuttiness.
Garth, where's my mom?
Where's my mom?
Dude, I have to wonder how many Instagram followers he's gotten since Tom started all that.
I wish I could pull those numbers up.
I mean, you're welcome, Garth Brooks.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's
the only reason
crazy.
I'm following.
It's so crazy.
And by the way,
same.
When you go those 300 comments deep, the 4 comments that are fans, 2 of them are fans asking, "What is going on? Why are you guys asking about bodies?"
Yeah, what are these people talking about?
So they're a result of Tom Segura as well. Anyways.
Oh man.
All right, Josh, we are gonna close it out with that. I'll stay on here for just a moment more to say goodbye to everyone, all 3 of us that are watching. Well, it'll be 2 now. But dude, Josh, thank you so much for doing this, for taking the time. And like I said, a few guests that I've had, I mean that genuinely for every guest. But again, very grateful that you took the time. You have things going on. You got work. You got your own podcast to run. So thank you for taking the time to hop on over here and spend some time with us on Not Your Mother's podcast and teach us some stuff. I don't mean to build you up. I'm just saying, although there's nothing wrong with that, I'm just saying I was helped by what you said and learned some things. It was very interesting. So thank you for taking the time. Very grateful for that, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Of course. Anytime anybody wants to talk about this stuff,
Let's talk.
I'm always down. So.
Well, we'll have you back again soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate that you care what I have to say enough to have me on.
For sure.
And I appreciate you lending me your platform because that's not a small thing.
Yep.
So, hey to all of Stuart's fans, and thank you for watching. And this was a blast.
Hell yeah, same. And guys, the pinned comment, I think it's still there. My comments are going crazy, or they have gone crazy throughout the podcast. But check out Good Humans, please. Josh, you're streaming everywhere, I believe. iTunes, even Spotify, which I haven't managed to get on. But anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you will find Good Humans, and it'll be a blast. If you're a fan of whatever it is, stand-up comedy, music, whatever it is, Josh has interviewed someone in that realm, I guarantee you. So check it out.
Next season's going to be themed.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't tell everyone what it is yet, but we have a few more episodes to wrap up this season. Next season's going to be themed. We're going to take maybe a 2-month break in between. But the next season, I'm so excited about it, and I'm really passionate about it. And I think people are going to like it, and it's going to be a lot more cohesive. So this season, so far I've interviewed all kinds of people. This season I was trying to interview as many artists as I possibly could.
Yeah,
but it wasn't only artists. Next season though is going to be a specific theme. It's going to be a lot more cohesive, and I'm so excited about it.
That's awesome.
It's and I think it's really like needed too. So
Sweet. I can't wait to see what you put out. I'm stoked on that. All right, Josh, I'm going to call you in a few minutes because we have some other stuff to catch up on.
all right.
But anyways, thank you so much, dude.
All right, dude. Talk soon.
We'll talk soon. All right. See you later, Josh. Cool. And everyone else, all three of us that are in here. I think Andrew left and John left. Guys, come back. I had something to say. They're not going to. They're not watching. John's got kids, and it's what is it? Where are my brothers at? It's 11:15. But you guys kept dropping Tom Segura comments, and so I want to say bikes really quick, and that's it. If you like stand-up comedy and you can stand some crudeness, Tom Segura is the guy for you. Check him out. He's got, I think, 3 specials on Netflix. He's hilarious, but we talked about him a lot tonight. Anyways, for those of you that are currently watching and those of you that will watch this later, very grateful, as always, for you taking the time to tune in. We started around, we've been going about 3 hours. That's kind of what I estimated. So thank you guys so much for checking out this episode of Not Your Mother's Podcast. Again, it is a live episode, but hopefully in the next couple weeks or so, I'll do my best to get it up on iTunes and YouTube as well. So thank you guys so much for checking this episode out. We will see you on the next one. Super grateful.